Chapter 14:16. Over the years, the scourge of Mara along the coast of the Middle Earth had not been eradicated. The reason was that the major sects of the Middle Earth had encountered major incidents in succession over the years, so the eyes of the Middle Earth's practitioners had never paid attention to Mara, who was wreaking havoc along the coast. In addition, the sea was vast and boundless, and Mara's army was wandering everywhere, making it difficult for people to track them. Although the various sects along the coast had the intention to encircle and annihilate them, they could not capture the traces of Mara's army. Naturally, they could not completely eliminate the scourge of Mara. There was another more important reason, which was the threat of the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace had always sought a place in the Middle Earth that could be used to establish a foundation for their power to penetrate deep into the Middle Earth. However, this attempt had always been strongly resisted by the various sects along the coast led by the Jianghu sect. The two sides even often had conflicts over the coastal areas. In the past, the Jianghu sect had the secret support of Jiuquan Tower, Wuxia School, Skyward Pavilion, and other holy lands. But now, the Jiuquan Tower had been greatly damaged by Mara's army and had to announce the closure of the mountain. Several pure Yang practitioners of Wuxia School had also died, which caused public anger in the Middle Earth. And Skyward Pavilion had somehow provoked the tyrannical Tortoise clan of the South Sea. In the past, the forces behind the Jianghu sect had no time to care about other things due to various reasons. This was originally the best time for the Crystal Palace to take advantage of the opportunity to expand. However, at this time the disaster of Mara broke out along the coast. Under the deliberate connivance of the Jianghu sect and other sects, they happened to isolate the exit of the East Stormy Ocean from the Middle Earth. The Jianghu sect deliberately shrank, so the Mara's army all went to the various strongholds established by the Crystal Palace in the sea. Instead, the Crystal Palace had to face all the Mara's army that was wreaking havoc on the sea and had to stop the expansion. This was also where the Tianxian sect and the Heavenly Moon sect had always been at odds. The Tianxian sect did not directly face the pressure of the Crystal Palace, so they needed to eradicate the hidden danger of Mara on the surface of the sea. However, the Heavenly Moon sect needed the existence of Mara's army to form a natural barrier against the expansion of the Crystal Palace's power. However, the sea was vast and the north and south were the same. Even if the Heavenly Profound sect cleared out the Mara on their own sea, there would still be the Heavenly Moon sect's Mara army on the coast. Similarly, one of the most important reasons why the Tianxian sect allied with Jinling was that they wanted to join forces with Jinling to completely eliminate the hidden danger of Mara in the sea. However, in this way the number of Mara in the sea area of the Tianxian sect would be divided, which would give the Crystal Palace an opportunity to take advantage of. This was also the reason why the Heavenly Moon sect immediately came to the Tianxian sect after hearing that Jinling was about to become a large sect. The Yulin River meandered to the west. Not far from where the Tianxian sect was located was the estuary of the second largest river in the Central Plains. Back then, Lu Ping followed the meandering Yulin River to the east, and finally comprehended the mystery of the Great River Flows East sword technique at the estuary of the Yulin River. He separated this great sword technique from the all rivers in the sea sword technique, and laid the foundation for it to become a supreme sword technique by itself. Now that Lu Ping once again came to the estuary of the Yulin River, the scene he saw was naturally different from that time when he was still a minor repairs cultivator of the forging core. Green and red light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and he saw a group of fish at the estuary of the Yulin River. This group of fish was divided into dozens of groups, always cruising back and forth in the waters of dozens of miles around the estuary, but never leaving the estuary. Qing Li Laozu smiled and said, "This is the Wuling fish Dao soldiers left by Wuling Laozu. For thousands of years, this group of Dao soldiers has been guarding the estuary of the Yulin River, so that the demon clan in the Yulin River and the demon clan in the sea have never cooperated with each other. At the same time, this is the fundamental reason why Mara from the sea has never invaded the coast." Back then, Wuling Laozu used 3,000 Wuling fish Dao soldiers to block the attack of 100,000 Mara's army, and became famous. Since then, these Wuling fish Dao soldiers had been guarding here. Back then, when Lu Ping gained enlightenment on swordsmanship here, he practiced his swordsmanship without fear. But he didn't know that under his feet, there were hidden dangers that could take his life at any time. These 3,000 Dao soldiers were far more powerful than when Lu Dague was defending against the demon clan's attack on Huangli Island. The 300 Wuling fish Dao soldiers that Lu Ping trained were very messy. Most of the Dao soldiers were in the late blood condensation stage, and only a few were barely in the core forging stage. But these 3,000 Dao soldiers were all in the late blood condensation stage, and nearly 100 of them were in the core forging stage. Compared to these 3,000 Dao soldiers, Lu Ping's 300 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers were just a motley crew. So this battle will be led by the Wuling Fish Dao soldiers? Qing Li Laozu nodded and said, indeed. This time, the four sects, your sect, Heavenly Moon sect and Carefree Pavilion will work together to suppress the Mara's army on the sea in a specific area. Then, with the help of Mo Luo's power, we can drive the Crystal Palace's forces back to the East Sea. But it's not like there won't be any problems. Lu Ping looked at Qing Li Laozu in surprise and said, what? Qing Li Laozu smiled unnaturally and said, you also know that Xiao Baiyu and Senior Qi Fan are close friends. He has seen through this, so Skyrend also wants to interfere. Lu Ping's expression froze. The four sects had planned this for a long time. Junling had obtained the transfer point of their allies and the large sects, so their status was recognized. Heavenly Xian sect solved the problem at the sea. Heavenly Moon sect might suffer a greater loss, but they could completely eradicate the hidden danger of the Crystal Palace's expansion. As for Carefree Pavilion, they already had an unresolvable hatred with the Crystal Palace, and they also had a close relationship with Heavenly Moon sect. As long as they could make the Crystal Palace suffer losses, they would not shirk their responsibility. The final result of this matter could be said to be a happy ending. However, at this time, Skyrend wanted to interfere. It was not that Skyrend's participation would affect the cooperation of the four sections. After all, Skyrend was an old sect that was not weaker than Heavenly Shen sect. With their participation, this matter would definitely be easier. However, with the strength of the four sects, it was completely possible for Skyrend to participate at this time only for this matter. As expected, Qing Li Laozu continued to say, what Xiao Baiyu means is that Junling, Heavenly Xian and Heavenly Moon sects cooperation is enough to suppress Mara's army from the sea and wait for an opportunity to expel the Crystal Palace's forces on the sea. At this time, Skyrend and Carefree Pavilion can completely take the opportunity to block the entrance of the East Sea Storm Ocean from behind and block the Crystal Palace's forces to the west of the Storm Ocean from retreating. Lu Ping suddenly gasped and said, does he mean to destroy all the forces of the Crystal Palace in the west of the Storm Ocean? Qing Li Laozu smiled bitterly and said, I'm afraid so. Lu Ping couldn't help but ask, isn't he afraid that the Crystal Palace will be angry and take revenge? Although the four sects expelled the forces of the Crystal Palace in the name of encircling and suppressing Mara, they were also offending the Crystal Palace. However, after all, they had the reason to exterminate Mara. The forces of the Crystal Palace were only expelled but not annihilated. The two parties didn't completely fall out with each other. What's more, the four sects were also not weak. Even if the Crystal Palace wanted to do something, it would have to weigh whether it was worth it or not. It could be said that this time the four sects joined hands to step on the bottom line of the Crystal Palace. But if they really acted like Skyrend, it would be a complete declaration of war with the Crystal Palace. At that time, even if the Crystal Palace was concerned about the strength of the four sects, they couldn't remain indifferent when their practitioners were slaughtered. What's more, in the face of such a huge sect that had been passed down since the beginning of the world by the seventh patriarch, no one knew what other trump cards they were hiding. Thinking of the heaven and earth wine tripod at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain and the heaven-covering feather fan above Nine Mysteries Tower, Lu Ping still shuddered with fear. Xiao Baiyu thinks that this is the best time to weaken the Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace has been spreading around these years, which also scattered the strength of the sections. It's a good time to destroy them one by one. Destroy them one by one? That's the Crystal Palace. Lu Ping couldn't help but ask, then what does Senior Qi Fan mean? Qing Li Laozu also showed a helpless expression and said, Senior Qi Fan didn't agree at first, but after the secret talk with Xiao Baiyu, he seemed to be a little hesitant. Also, Full Moon Laozu of the Heavenly Moon sect also seemed to be a little undecided. This time, since your sect has come to the east, Xiao Baiyu also wants to meet you. Lu Ping said in surprise, Xiao Baiyu is in Tianshan City now? Why does he want to see me? This matter is decided by the elders of the sect. It's not something that a junior can decide. Hearing this, Qing Li Laozu smiled and said, young friend, there's no need to belittle yourself. With your current position, even if you don't interfere with the matters of the sect, your words and actions have an incomparably great influence on the sect. If I were Xiao Baiyu, I would also find you at the first instance. Lu Ping smiled helplessly and said, but this time the decision is made by Martial Uncle Jiang Tianlin of our sect. I will respect Martial Uncle's opinion. Qing Li Laozu smiled and didn't comment on Lu Ping's words. That's right. Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and said, what is Xiao Yao Pavilion thinking? If they really do this, Xiaoyao Pavilion and Skyrend, who are in the East Sea, will instead bear the brunt of the Crystal Palace's revenge. Qingli Laozu said helplessly, that's the strange thing. This time Xiaoyao Pavilion is on Xiao Baiyu's side. It's also because of Xiaoyao Pavilion's support that Xiao Baiyu is so confident to persuade the other three sections. Lu Ping was stunned. However, after thinking about it, it couldn't be more normal. With the opposition between Xiaoyao Pavilion and the Crystal Palace, even with this scheme, the relationship between the two parties wouldn't get worse. As for revenge, Xiaoyao Pavilion had been suppressed by the Crystal Palace for many years. Now that there was a chance to make the Crystal Palace suffer a great loss, Xiaoyao Pavilion naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity. In a sense, this time Xiao Baiyu's proposal was probably the one that really hit it off with Xiaoyao Pavilion. Chapter 14-17. Xiao Baiyu looked at Lu Ping and smiled. Is this the third time we've met? Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, more than that. Xiao Baiyu smiled and said directly, although I have already overestimated your growth, it seems that it is still far from enough. Your rise is just like the sect you belong to, it is beyond everyone's expectations. Lu Ping smiled and did not say anything. Xiao Baiyu did not mind and continued, everyone can see that Jinling will rise in the North Sea, but no one would have thought that Jinling would have such a terrifying number of high-level adepts. If it wasn't for the fact that Jinling does not have a strong enough foundation, that the time it took for it to rise is too short, and that the distribution of Dharma adepts in each generation is not reasonable, just based on the number of Dharma adepts in your sect, it is already enough to be mentioned in the same breath as Skyrend, the Tianshen sect and the Tianyue sect. On this point, Xiao Baiyu was very much in line with Jinling's reality. Currently, there were only 3 adepts left in the first generation of Jinling, and the number of second-generation Dharma adepts had already reached 9. In the third generation, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling had surged. With Lu Tianping and Yin Tianchu as the leaders, there were now more than 15 adepts who had reached the Dharma stage, and this number was still growing. Furthermore, these were just the adepts that Jinling had cultivated. If the outer sect elders such as Xiang Lu, Lei Di, and Qinghu were added, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling would be even larger. It was no wonder that after this promotion battle, the strength that Jinling had displayed had shocked the entire world of practitioners. In reality, Jinling had already realized this problem. Although the appearance of a large number of Dharma adepts could make Jinling flourish for a while, such a large group of Dharma adepts would definitely take up a large amount of training resources. Moreover, the North Sea training world was a barren place, which made the already tight situation even more difficult, to the point where it would affect the training of the younger generation. After all, the legacy of a sect was a long-term plan. Such an uncontrolled expansion of the sect's strength would definitely cause the younger generation of disciples to become weaker due to the lack of sufficient training resources. The truly strong sects would control the number of Dharma adepts in the sect very well. Perhaps there were many adepts who had the potential to advance to the Dharma stage, but they would always make them compete with each other and pick out the more outstanding disciples to train. Although this might reduce the number of Dharma adepts that the sect might have, it could save a large amount of training resources to train the younger generation of disciples. At the same time, a portion of the training resources could be stored away in case of emergencies. Of course, there might be some disciples who had their own opportunities. Originally, they had been quietly abandoned by the sect, but they had managed to advance through their own hard work. This way, the sect would not have to expend too much in order to gain a powerful disciple. This was something that any sect would welcome. Only in this way could a sect be able to carry on a good succession with limited training resources. At the same time, when the sect was faced with a crisis, it could also train a large number of Dharma adepts in a short period of time to help the sect overcome the crisis. Now that the 4th generation of Jinling's adepts had gradually grown up, the more outstanding ones had already begun to enter the late core forging stage. The matter of the 4th generation of adepts advancing to the Dharma stage had also begun to be brought up more and more by the sect. Although the 4th generation of adepts did not have as many outstanding adepts as the 3rd generation, there were still many disciples who were looked upon favorably by the sect. However, Lu Ping had already received news from the head of the sect that the sect was only prepared to select 15 to 20 of the most outstanding adepts from the 4th generation of disciples to become direct disciples. They would compete with each other and strengthen their foundations. Then they would select 10 to 12 disciples who stood out from the rest to train and help them condense their Dharma power. It could be said that the head of the sect, Lu Tianling, had an extremely accurate grasp of Jinling. She did not bite off more than she could chew just because the sect's strength was expanding, especially because of the explosion of the third generation of Dharma adepts. Instead, she was extremely pragmatic in reducing the number of fourth-generation adepts who could advance to the Dharma stage. The entire process was estimated to take 50 to 100 years, and the fourth generation of Jinling's disciples would begin to advance to the Dharma stage. Lu Ping smiled and said, "Thank you for your advice, Senior. However, Senior Xiao has come to see me this time only to talk about some plans for the development of the sect, right?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "Of course not. I'm just saying this because I feel that your sect is an ambitious sect. You shouldn't just limit your vision to a corner of the North Sea, but should look at the entire world of training." Lu Ping did not become complacent because of Xiao Baiyu's words. Instead, he said calmly, "Ideals can't be separated from reality. It is already difficult for Jinling to maintain its position in the North Sea, and I'm afraid that outside of the North Sea, there are many things that we don't have the strength to do." The admiration in Xiao Baiyu's eyes deepened, and he said, "This is your sect underestimating itself. With your sect's current strength, you have a lot of potential in the world of training. Also, as the saying goes, the tree may desire peace, but the wind will not stop. If Jinling wants to have a stable place in the North Sea, it will also need the consent of others." Lu Ping's expression changed and he said in a low voice, "What do you mean, Senior?" Xiao Baiyu had long expected that Lu Ping would ask such a question, and as soon as his voice fell, he answered, "There are two meanings. The first is in Jinling itself and the second is in you." Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and said, "I'd like to hear the details." Xiao Baiyu said with fervor and assurance, "Let's talk about your sect first. I have also heard about what happened after your sect's treasure ship sailed to the west this time. Although the process was dangerous, in fact, your sect and little friend Lu already had a well-thought-out plan. Whether it is the Songhai sect, the Shenling sect or the Taishan sect, they are just clowns who can't achieve anything. Even if the Beihai sect sends out all its forces, the final result is just a scare but no danger." Lu Ping could not help but ask, "What is Senior trying to say? Doesn't your sect think that everything is too easy?" "Easy?" Lu Ping thought for a while and said, "Senior, you mean?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "Yes, it is the Crystal Palace. If the Crystal Palace intervenes this time, let alone whether your sect can succeed, even if you succeed, how heavy a price will you have to pay?" Lu Ping was a little unconvinced and said, "The reason why our sect set sail at this time is that the Crystal Palace has no time to attend to other things this time." "Of course, it is because the Crystal Palace has no time to attend to other things. But what about when the Crystal Palace has time to spare?" Lu Ping said, "You mean that the Crystal Palace will return to the North Sea?" Xiao Baiyu said matter-of-factly, "Unless we can make the Crystal Palace retreat in the face of difficulties, otherwise, with the nature of the Crystal Palace, they will think that the entire overseas cultivation world belongs to them." Seeing that Lu Ping was silent, Xiao Baiyu continued, "Now in the overseas cultivation world, other than the Crystal Palace, there are 9 other large sections. I don't know if you have noticed that other than the Wind Thunder Island and the Purple Talisman Pavilion, which are vassals of the Crystal Palace, only the Jinling family is a local sect of the overseas cultivation world." Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he heard Xiao Baiyu continue, "Be it the 4 major sects of the Southern Sea or the Eastern Sea's Skyrend and Carefree Pavilion, when traced back to their origins, they were all driven overseas to rebuild their sections. As for the local sects in the overseas cultivation world, Flying Spirit Island was destroyed 4,000 years ago. You've personally witnessed the collapse of the Northern Alliance, and the Southern Sea doesn't even have a single local major sect. As the largest local sect in the Southern Sea, the Yulin sect has long reached the qualifications to be promoted to a major sect, but it has never built a treasured ship. It was only when it hooked up with the Yuan clan and wanted to promote its sect that it unexpectedly ran into the conflict between the 4 major sects of the Southern Sea and the Skyward Pavilion. The Bagui clan also interfered in the middle. The stormy ocean from the Southern Sea to the Central Plains was completely sealed off, so naturally the promotion of the Yulin sect was impossible. Although the Jinling sect has successfully promoted to a major sect, I'm afraid that the crisis of your sect has just begun." After Xiao Baiyu finished speaking, Lu Ping was silent at the side, but the affection on his face was changing rapidly. Obviously, Lu Ping was digesting Xiao Baiyu's previous words in his mind. Xiao Baiyu's words might be exaggerated, especially the destruction of the Northern Alliance and failing sect. Perhaps it was not the Crystal Palace's purge of the overseas local sections. From the information that Lu Ping had, especially the destruction of failing sect, there might be other hidden reasons. However, it was also true that the Crystal Palace was the main force behind the destruction of these sections. From this point of view, what Xiao Baiyu said was also true. From the behavior of Xiao Baiyu, perhaps Skyrind had also felt the pressure from the Crystal Palace, so he spared no effort to unite the overseas sects and coastal sects to resist the Crystal Palace. After a long time, Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief and said, "Senior, there is one more reason about me that I haven't told you." Xiao Baiyu couldn't help laughing and said, "You and I are the well-deserved best among the practitioners of the same generation. Even when I was like you, I might not have such achievements as you. Even I have to live outside for 200 years. Little friend, do you think the Crystal Palace will let you go?" Xiao Baiyu and Skyrind could cause such a big movement. If there is another Lu Tianping and Jinling, the overseas cultivation world will be in chaos. Danger always needs to be nipped in the bud. Lu Ping smiled and said, "So, instead of waiting for the opponent to come and slaughter us, why not take the initiative to attack?" Xiao Baiyu suddenly smiled. He knew that Lu Ping had probably already agreed with his approach. The two changed the topic at the same time. Lu Ping originally wanted to ask him about the sword duel in Xiang Palace, but unexpectedly Xiao Baiyu didn't care about it. Instead, he showed a trace of seriousness on his face and said carefully, "That day at the Qingming River, although I invited Lu Xiaoyu and was rejected once, this time I still want to invite you to join us again. That day your cultivation was not good, but now you are qualified to be on equal footing with us, so I hope you can consider it seriously." This time, Lu Ping didn't refuse immediately like before. Instead, he looked at Xiao Baiyu seriously and asked, "What are you planning?" Chapter 14-18. After Xiao Baiyu left, Lu Ping sat quietly in the quiet room that Tianxian sect had arranged for him in Tianxian City for a day and a night. Xiao Baiyu told Lu Ping everything about their organization, which also meant that Lu Ping had finally agreed to join them. Ambition was really a wonderful thing. When he heard it from others, he always felt that it was inconceivable, unbelievable, and fantastic. However, when he decided to participate in it himself, and the seed in his heart was ignited, he realized that everything was so tempting, and the prospects were so bright, and the future was so beautiful. An ambitious person would never be afraid of challenges. On the contrary, every time a challenge came, it would stimulate his ambition. When his ambition was big enough, he would even take the initiative to accept challenges, and even take the initiative to look for challenges. Although some of the details of the plan that Xiao Baiyu revealed seemed extremely crazy, Lu Ping had to admit that these ideas were supported by sufficient reasons, and there were reasons for success. Once the plan was successful, it would be a great opportunity for these participants and the forces behind them. Therefore, Lu Ping could not help but be tempted. After a day and a night, when Lu Ping opened his eyes, his bright eyes made Lu Ping's temperament change. His complacent demeanor naturally brought a temperament that made people believe, worship, and even submit to him. Since he wanted to take this path, he would start by challenging the authority of the Crystal Palace in the overseas cultivation world. After walking out of the quiet room, Xiahou Wuxiang, who was waiting for Lu Ping outside, looked at Lu Ping and was stunned. Lu Ping said with a smile, "Brother Xiahou, I can't stand you staring at me like this." Xiahou Wuxiang could not help laughing and said, "Brother Lu seems to be different from before." Lu Ping asked, "What's the difference?" Xiahou Wuxiang shook his head and said, "I can't tell. It seems that some places are very similar to Martial Granduncle 7 fans, but I can't tell at all." Lu Ping laughed soundlessly and asked, "Has our sect's treasured ship arrived?" Xiahou Wuxiang said, "Yes, the secret outpost set up by our sect overseas has received a message from Jiang Tianlin Laozu. The treasure ship has sailed out of the Storm Ocean and encountered a wave of Mara's army. After repelling Mara's army, the treasure ship is now anchored at the entrance of the Storm Ocean." Lu Ping perked up and said, "So we can start?" Xiahou Wuxiang nodded and said, "There's no time to lose. After Mara's army is blocked at the entrance of the Storm Ocean, it is very likely that they will immediately counterattack. Martial Granduncle Dong Lu has already gathered 3,000 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers at the mouth of the Yulon River to attack first. Our sect has also made preparations and will set off soon." The Tianxian sect's speed was fast enough, but it was naturally much slower than Lu Ping alone. Although the 3,000 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers controlled by Dong Lu Laozu were fast enough in the sea, they encountered Mara 100 miles out of the mouth of the river. Even though it was only a small group of Mara, they were crushed by the 3,000 Dao soldiers formation before they could cause any waves. After that, the Dao soldier formation encountered more and more Mara, and the advancing speed inevitably slowed down. Although Lu Ping was in a hurry to cross the sea and meet up with the ship near the stormy ocean, he still paid forefather Dong Lu a visit when he passed by the Dao Soldier Formation. Then he observed the true power of the Wuling Fish Dao Soldier Formation. Under the cover of Lu Ping's divine thoughts, he could see that under the control of Dong Lu Laozu, the 3,000 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers were divided into 10 shoals, and each shoal had 300 Wuling fish that formed a small Dao Soldier Formation. The 10 shoals were lined up horizontally, and each shoal was about 5 kilometers apart. The 10 shoals could cover an area of 100 kilometers. If they encountered a small group of Mara, a single shoal was enough to deal with them. If they encountered a larger shoal, there would immediately be shoals coming to their aid. Unless they encountered the main force of Mara's army, the 3,000 Wuling Fish Dao soldiers could go on a rampage in the sea. The storm ocean near the Heavenly Xian sect happened to be in the Northeast Sea. After the Dao Soldier Formation set off from the mouth of the Yulon River, it took a diagonal line from the southwest to the northeast. The Heavenly Xian sect cultivators who set off later followed the path opened by the Dao Soldier Formation and only left a small group of cultivators to advance north to kill Mara. Most of the Heavenly Xian sect cultivators headed south and began to drive the rampaging Mara army south. The key to completing this entire process was that Jinling's treasure ship could guard the entrance to the storm ocean. If they could not guard the entrance, once the Mara army on the sea was driven away by the Heavenly Xian sect, a considerable number of them would try to retreat into the storm ocean to hide. If that happened, the meticulously planned plan of the 4 major sects would be greatly disrupted. After witnessing the true power of the Wuling Fish Dao Soldier Formation, Lu Ping passed the Dao Soldier Formation and rushed to the entrance of the storm ocean. In reality, it was not just Lu Ping. Most of the high-level cultivators of the Heavenly Xian sect above the Dharma phase had already passed the line of defense set up by the ordinary cultivators and rushed into the depths of the sea to find the high-level Mara to drive away. During this period, Lu Ping also encountered some Mara's obstruction. However, for Lu Ping at this time, even the appearance of an Azura might not have much effect on him. However, whenever he encountered a high-level Mara, Lu Ping would often show his strength to scare them away. Then he would pretend to chase them and drive them to the south. These high-level Mara were the main force that the 4 major sects used to plot against the Crystal Palace. They could not be lost at this time. However, after passing the Dao Soldier Formation and going more than 100 miles into the sea, Lu Ping's body flashed with a golden light. Then he turned into a pool of water and disappeared into the sea. Lu Ping's cultivation of the water transformation technique had reached an extremely high level. In the sea, it was difficult for even the water Azura to find his trace. However, if he wanted to fly extremely fast in the water, he had to use the body water transformation talisman. The storm ocean was about 3,000 miles from the Middle-earth continent. After Lu Ping performed the water transformation technique, it didn't take long for him to reach the sea near the storm ocean. The violent spiritual chi shock forced Lu Ping to stop the conveyance light and rise from the sea. Then he saw several miles away about thousands of Mara's army, led by 2 Azuras, 7 or 8 Jade Mara, and more than 10 Blood Mara, had surrounded the treasure ship. Then they charged at the Jinling treasure ship one after another. Just hundreds of feet behind the treasure ship, in the space entrance of the storm ocean, the violent shock caused by the battle was like a wrinkled lake surface, with circles of ripples. Although the Mara's army's offensive was fierce, it never made any progress in the face of the treasure ship. Instead, the various magical powers and spells on the treasure ship caused a large number of casualties. However, in the face of the Mara's army, which had an absolute advantage and was guarded by 2 Azuras, although Jinling could use the treasure ship to defend, he couldn't beat the Mara's army back. At this time, the treasure ship couldn't move in order to guard the entrance of the storm ocean behind it. Therefore, it could only fight head-on with the Mara's army. However, in the face of Mara's fearless attack, casualties were inevitable despite the treasure ship's defensive formation. In particular, when the 2 Azuras attacked, they would often hide among the attacking Mara's army, making it difficult for the cultivators on the treasure ship to detect them. Then they would suddenly attack and pierce through the treasure ship's defensive formation. Before the formation's protective shield could be repaired, the Jade Mara or Blood Mara would take the opportunity to kill the Jinling cultivators on the treasure ship with great tacit understanding. When Lu Ping saw the 2 Azuras appear, he was surprised. Lu Ping had come fast enough, but he didn't expect that the Mara's army in the sea area of the Heavenly Mystery Sect would gather such a powerful force to counterattack in such a short time. Was this a coincidence or was there something unexpected? Lu Ping didn't have time to think too much about it. At this time, Although Junling's situation could be defended for a short time, it would be very bad if it dragged on. Lu Ping used the water transformation technique to hide himself in the seawater and quickly approached the battle. When he was only a few hundred feet away from the battle, one of the two Asuras seemed to suddenly notice something and suddenly turned to look at the sea. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly burst out of the seawater. The sword of true spirit in his hand immediately turned into 6 flood dragons and rushed toward the Mara's army that was 100 feet away. The first move Lu Ping made was the battle formula of the heaven opening sword technique that he had mastered so far. The 6 sword light flood dragons did not attack the 2 Asuras. Instead, they rushed toward the 6 Jade Mara's army from different directions. This was beyond the expectations of the 2 Asuras. With Lu Ping's current power, the heaven opening sword technique was not to be underestimated. The 6 flood dragons went around the 2 Asuras and went straight for the Jade Mara. It immediately caused chaos in the Mara's army. The 2 Asuras quickly tried to stop them, but they only had time to break 2 of the flood dragon sword lights. They could not do anything to the remaining 4 flood dragon sword lights. A Jade Shura that was targeted by the sword light reached out and picked up 2 big Shuras. She threw them at the sword light flood dragons, and then they were swallowed by the sword light flood dragons. However, this Jade Shura was able to escape the heaven opening sword technique's attack. However, the remaining 3 Jade Devils were not so lucky. 2 of them were killed by the horned light serpent on the spot, while the last one survived. However, its primordial spirit treasure and one of its legs were chewed to pieces by the horned light serpent. The Junling cultivators had clearly seen Lu Ping's sword techniques. When Lu Ping killed 2 Jade Demons and severely injured a Jade Shura, everyone on the ship suddenly cheered. Just as Lu Ping relieved the pressure on the ship, an Asura roared and rushed toward Lu Ping. Chapter 14:19. Only one? I'll use you to test how far I've progressed in my training. Facing the charging Asura, Lu Ping wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he was overjoyed. The sword of true spirit trembled and 9 sword rays flew out from the sword. The 9 sword rays condensed the spiritual energy in the air and formed 9 Jiao dragons that bared their fangs and brandished their claws. The 9 Jiao dragons stood in different directions and vaguely formed a huge net that enveloped the charging Asura. Because the Asura had a companion spiritual treasure that was almost equivalent to a pure Yang spirit treasure, the Asura's true ability was often between a late Dharma adept and a pure Yang adept. Previously, when Lu Ping was at the mid-Dharma stage, he could kill a heavily injured Asura in a one-on-one fight. Now that he had advanced to the late Dharma stage, Lu Ping's ability had increased by several times. Naturally, it was not difficult for him to defeat an uninjured Asura. The only thing that Lu Ping cared about was how long it would take him to defeat it. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. However, Lu Ping seemed to have already expected this to happen. Just as the Asura broke free, the sword of true spirit had already transformed into a raging river of swords that rolled towards it. This kind of supreme power that was so powerful that it covered the sky and the earth often had an obvious characteristic, which was that it was impossible to dodge. When faced with the impact of such a power, one could only face it head-on. Of course, there were times when such a power would inevitably decrease its power because the area it covered was too large. However, this also depended on who was using it. Although this Asura was also a water Asura, in the face of the mighty and invincible aura of the Great River Flows East sword technique, it was not easy for it to escape even though it was able to protect itself. This was the effect Lu Ping wanted. After performing the Great River East sword technique, the true vitality in Lu Ping's body surged like a great river. He did not show any signs of temporary lack of true vitality after performing the supreme magic. Instead, he quickly formed a seal in front of his chest and pressed it down on the water Shura who could not dodge in time. Although Lu Ping and the Asura were separated by dozens of feet, the seal seemed to ignore the existence of space. The moment Lu Ping made the seal, it had already been applied to the Asura's body. The protective divine art around Asura instantly let out a cracking sound. Immediately after, Asura himself seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. His entire body was sent flying backward like a prawn. Lu Ping's consecutive attacks had always been like a raging river. Once he attacked, there was no reason for him to stop halfway. This kind of powerful divine art that was so closely linked gave people a feeling that it could penetrate through any hole and was impossible to resist. Just as the Asura was hit by Lu Ping's mysterious seal, the sword of true spirit was ready to attack again. A green dragon roared out of the sword light and crashed into the Asura who had yet to recover from Lu Ping's attack. The third attack, Green Dragon Sea Disturbance Technique. The Asura was already severely injured. At this time the Asura finally panicked. Before it could completely control its body, it had already stumbled to escape into the distance. The other Asura also realized that the situation was not good and tried to come to help. How could Lu Ping let such a good opportunity slip away? He pressed his hands down slightly on the sea under his feet. The entire sea suddenly trembled, and a muffled rumble came from the depths of the sea. The two Asuras were about to converge. Once the two Asuras joined forces, it would be difficult for Lu Ping to kill them. However, at this moment, a series of 18 rotating water pillars suddenly hung upside down from the bottom of the sea. Like a row of bars in a prison, it completely separated the two Asuras. Although the two were close, they could no longer converge. The waterspout created by Lu Tianling was originally an evolution of the water control technique. Now, in the hands of Lu Ping, this inherited divine art of the Dao Zhonghua lineage was finally carried forward. It couldn't fight, couldn't escape, and its reinforcements were intercepted. The Asura, who had lost its backup, finally panicked. But Lu Ping's method still did not stop. Just when the Asura was unable to break through the obstruction of Lu Ping's waterspout and was about to escape in another direction, its body suddenly sank. The seawater under its feet had formed a whirlpool, and the tumbling seawater was thrown backward. It was unknown when Lu Ping had set up the Sea of All Rivers sword array with the Sword of True Spirit. As the Asura cried out in alarm, the powerful binding force of the All Rivers run into the sea sword formation made it impossible for him to break free. Then, the sword formation slowly rose into the air, and even the Asura's companion spiritual treasure was completely engulfed by the sword formation, leaving behind only a miserable howl. There were a total of 5 attacks. Lu Ping calculated in his heart, what would happen if he used the Aqua Sword to cast the Invisible Sword technique? What would happen if he used the Avatar Body? What would happen if he attacked with the 9 Dragons Bell? What would happen if he used the Linglong Cauldron? What would happen if he used the Boundless Sea Mulberry Field technique? What would happen if he used the Natal Gentian Array? What would happen if he used the Having Spirit Treasure? And what would happen if he summoned the Dragon Aspect? In the end, Lu Ping came to a conclusion. It seemed that the Asura was no longer a threat to him. Just after Lu Ping killed an Asura in a head-on confrontation for 5 rounds, the Mara army that was besieging the treasured ship had actually collapsed. Only a few fearless Mara were still relentlessly attacking the treasured ship. Lu Ping's body shook, and an invisible aura immediately calmed the turbulent space around him. Then he took a step forward and appeared above the treasured ship. A huge bell about 10 feet high floated in front of Lu Ping's head. The walls of the bell were engraved with 9 flood dragons baring their fangs and brandishing their claws in the clouds. As the huge bell flickered with a faint light above Lu Ping's head, the 9 flood dragons seemed to have come to life, swimming on the walls of the bell. Lu Ping took a deep breath, stretched out his finger and flicked the huge bell. Bang! With the treasured ship below Lu Ping as the center, a ripple that could almost be seen with the naked eye formed a huge sound wave ring that spread in all directions. The hundreds of Mara that were still besieging the treasured ship bore the brunt of the sound wave. First, more than 100 small Mara immediately solved the problem in midair, followed by a group of big Mara that smashed into the sea like hailstones and never floated up again. Then dozens of big Mara fell into the sea with their heads in their hands amid shrill roars, constantly struggling. Then a few blood Mara steered their escape lights as if they were drunk, slowly fleeing into the distance while sticking close to the surface of the sea. Only a few Jade Mara steered their escape lights with trembling bodies and fled away from the sea near the treasured ship in panic. As for the other Asura, after Lu Ping killed the previous Asura, it had already led most of the Mara army to retreat. The remaining Mara that were still besieging the treasured ship were mostly deployed by the previous Asura. Although the Mara retreated, it fled in all directions. Dozens of escape lights immediately rose from the treasured ship and chased after the Mara. Then they formed a large net and chased the escaping Mara to the south in an orderly manner. Lu Ping fell into the treasured ship, and the Jinling disciples on the treasured ship were still talking about Lu Ping's heroic act of killing the Asura. They looked at Lu Ping with awe and admiration. Seeing that Jiang Tianlin had already come out of the treasure cabin, Lu Ping asked with a smile, "Martial uncle, was the trip to the storm ocean smooth?" Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "Although the entire process was extremely dangerous, in the end there was no danger." Before Lu Ping landed on the treasured ship, He saw that the body of the treasured ship was covered in all kinds of mottled marks. The treasured ship itself was protected by formations, and the body of the ship was connected with all kinds of seals and runes. Ordinary treasures could not damage the body of the treasured ship at all. Only the spatial storms in the storm ocean could ignore the protective formations and directly affect the body of the treasured ship. Jiang Tianlin asked about the current situation of the North Sea. Lu Ping roughly described the situation after the treasured ship entered the storm ocean. Hearing that the forces of Blue Sea Sect and Supreme Profound Sect invaded Frost Island, injured Tian Shui Laozu, and colluded with the demon race to ambush Huangli Island, even Jiang Tianlin's expression changed. He said fiercely, "One day I will destroy the inheritance of Blue Sea Sect." After hearing that Tianjiang Laozu had passed away, Jiang Tianlin and the many Jinling disciples on the treasured ship all showed sad expressions. This old man had spent all his efforts on the treasured ship in his last 100 years. Now that the treasured ship had successfully set sail for the Middle Earth, the old man did not live to see the treasured ship return smoothly. One could not be immersed in sadness for too long. After Jinling repelled the first counterattack of Mara's army, perhaps it was because of Lu Ping's tyrannical strength, or perhaps it was because of the deterrence of the Nine-Dragon Bell, Mara's army did not organize another counterattack. The Sky Profound Sect was not slow. They quickly finished cleaning up the northern part of the sea and successfully pushed the front line south. They also made contact with Jinling. The majority of Mara's army in the sea had been driven south, and there was no longer a need to guard the entrance of the storm ocean. The treasured ship immediately set sail again. With the treasured ship as the center, the cultivators of Jinling also drew a line on the surface of the sea that spanned several hundred kilometers and pressed south. This time Lu Ping voiced his doubts. To Azuras. This matter is indeed fishy. If Marshal Nephew hadn't arrived in time and used a tyrannical method to kill one of them, I'm afraid that even if our sect was able to defend the entrance to the Sea of Storms, we would have to pay a great price. Jiang Tianlin seemed to have expected Lu Ping's doubts. He smiled and explained, "Speaking of which, this is the trouble caused by your martial uncle Tianfeng. When the treasured ship left the entrance of the storm ocean, it dispersed a group of Mara's troops that were guarding the entrance. Your martial uncle Tianfeng volunteered to chase after this group of Mara to investigate. We had just entered the Sky Profound Sect Sea region and did not understand the situation. We needed someone to investigate the situation in the nearby sea region. Unexpectedly, when he chased after a small deserted island several hundred kilometers away, 2 Azuras and thousands of Mara's army suddenly gathered near the island. Then this group of Mara's army chased after him and killed their way to the entrance of the storm ocean." Lu Ping said thoughtfully, "A deserted island? Martial uncle, why don't we go there and take a look?" Chapter 1420. The treasure ship broke through the surface of the sea, and under the guidance of Liang Tianfeng, it sailed quickly south on the sea. When planning with the Tianshan sect to drive away Mara's army, Jinling was responsible for cutting off the escape route of Mara's army at the entrance of the Ocean of Storms. After persisting until they met up with the Tianshan sect cultivators, the two sides would pull a giant net over the vast sea 3,000 miles outside the Tianshan sect and drive the fleeing Mara south from the north to the south. Jinling was responsible for the sea area 800 miles west of the Tianshan sect. In order to prevent Mara's army from jumping over this line of defense, Jinling's dozen or so Dharma adepts, other than Lu Ping, Jiang Tianlin, and Liang Tianfeng who led the way, stayed on the treasure ship. The rest of the Dharma adepts of Jinling led the disciples of their sects to travel side by side with the treasure ship and the Tianshan sect cultivators, driving Mara south from the sea. In the treasure cabin, when there were no enemies, Jiang Tianlin would let the treasure ship's spirit, Ruyu, control the ship, while the three of them sat casually in the treasure cabin. Jiang Tianlin activated the abundant void mirror, and the mirror immediately showed the situation of the sea in front of the treasure ship as it sailed. It's in this direction. 300 miles south of this coral reef island is the location of the deserted island. That was where we encountered Mara's army that was gathering. There were 2 Azuras. If the old man had been one step slower, he would have lost his life. Liang Tianfeng obviously still had some lingering fears. Jiang Tianlin asked Lu Ping, "Nephew Lu, do you suspect that there's something strange about this island?" Lu Ping smiled and said, "I hope there's something strange about it. We all know that Mara never stays in one place for too long unless there's something in this place that attracts Mara. This has also become a very popular saying in the cultivation world, Mara never stays in a place without treasures. If this is really a place where Mara's army has gathered, then this island is very worth exploring. Jiang Tianlin pondered for a moment and said, just in case, inform everyone to return to the treasure ship and focus on figuring out what's strange about this island. After saying that, Jiang Tianlin turned to the treasure cabin and said, see if Xianwei has followed us out to the sea. If not, call him here. As the only mind-seeker in Jinling, wise Master Xuanwei's status had risen. Especially after the dispute with Tianshu Laozu, wise Master Xianwei had received a lot of support from the sect. However, this time he was also sent to Midland for the treasure ship's westward journey. After the treasure ship docked, wise Master Xianwei would head to Yingshan Courtyard. After that, he would secretly search for mineral veins in the Hebei cultivation world with the identity of a wandering cultivator. One reason was to expand the cultivation resources and relieve Jinling's increasing pressure on cultivation resources. The second reason was to train and perfect his Mindseeker secret technique and improve his Mindseeker standard. No matter what was on the deserted island, once the cultivators in Jinling had chased away Mara from the nearby sea, they would need wise Master Xianwei to go to the island to explore. When the treasure ship was about 200 miles away from the deserted island, 4 of the Dharma adepts who were patrolling the surrounding sea had already led their teams back. The remaining 6 were still maintaining the line of defense and imitating Mara's team to take the opportunity to escape to the north. When the treasure ship was only 150 miles away from the deserted island, Lu Ping seemed to feel something strange in the sea in front of him. He stood up and walked to the deck of the treasure ship. Jiang Tianlin seemed to feel something too. However, at this time he needed to guard the treasure cabin and control the treasure ship to prevent any unpredictable dangers from happening. The treasure ship advanced another 50 miles. On the calm sea they could even see the deserted island that Liang Tianfeng had seen before. Lu Ping's expression was slightly solemn. With a flip of his hand, the 9-dragon bell landed in his palm. Then he threw it gently and 8 small bells separated from the 9-dragon bell. Each small bell had a dragon circling around it. The dragon-shaped statue scurried around the 9 small bells and said with dissatisfaction, is there a need to be so nervous? You actually need me to make a move? Lu Ping waved his hand in the air, and the dragon-shaped statue immediately stopped talking. The 8 small bells gradually grew into 3-foot-long bronze bells. Then they automatically flew to the front, back, left, and right of the treasure ship as well as the mast. Each place had a hook specially reserved for the 9-dragon bell. The 8 bronze bells were hung on them, leaving only the bronze bell with the dragon-shaped statue floating in front of Lu Ping. The treasure ship broke through the waves at an extremely fast speed. Standing at the bow of the ship, one could feel the strong sea breeze. However, the 8 hanging bronze bells did not move at all in the sea breeze. The treasure ship was still 50 miles away from the deserted island. All kinds of seals and runes on the body of the treasure ship lit up one by one. Then, with a buzzing sound, the entire treasure ship was instantly enveloped by a protective array. The atmosphere on the treasure ship suddenly became tense. The Jinling disciples on the treasure ship all performed their duties and prepared for any changes. At this time, Lu Ping smiled at the dragon-shaped statue and said, I'll let you see a big scene. What? Before the dragon-shaped statue could react, it saw that a drumstick had appeared in Lu Ping's hand. Impressively, it was also a transcendent artifact. The dragon-shaped statue was shocked and said, What are you doing? That's a drumstick, not a bell hammer. Hey. Lu Ping used the drumstick in his hand to strike a 9-dragon bell. The other 8 bronze bells on the treasure ship responded one after another as if they were telepathic. Thus, the treasure ship rang out 9 times in a row. Clang, clang, clang. The 9 bell rings rang out one after another, and the originally calm sea in front of the treasure ship suddenly became turbulent. Then, blood-curdling screams came from the sea in the distance. Countless Mara broke out of the water and went crazy under the ringing of the 9-dragon bell of the Great Tao. They scurried on the surface of the sea like headless flies, causing the entire sea to churn. Countless huge waves and undercurrents wreaked havoc in the 50 miles ahead of them. There were even many Mara that started killing each other in the chaos. Is Mara's army going to ambush us in this area of the sea? Liang Tianfeng had unknowingly appeared behind Lu Ping, and he was also shocked by the scene of demons dancing in front of him. If the treasured ship were to really sail into the ambush area of the Devil Luo army at this moment, under the sudden attack of the Devil Luo army, even if the people of Jinling sect could protect the treasured ship, they would still suffer a great loss. They're just some small fries. Mara's real trump card can't be affected too much by the 9-dragon bell. Those high-level Mara that haven't appeared yet are the ones that can really cause damage to the treasure ship. The 9-Dragon Bell can only make Mara's ambush fail. The remaining ones are the tough ones. Let's prepare for a tough battle. This deserted island is really strange. However, the 9-Dragon Bell's random hammering is probably enough to make this group of Mara suffer. It seems that the big Mara below the blood Mara have all fallen into chaos. The little Mara is nowhere to be seen. I'm afraid that they've already been killed under the sea. This is much more powerful than Senior Xiang Lu's Sea Bell. Lu Ping shook his head and said with a serious expression, the 9-Dragon Bell is a big formation formed by the 9 bronze bells. Its power is not much different from the Sea Bell. After all, the 9-Dragon Bell is not a real spirit treasure. However, when the 9 bells work together, the range of their remarkable power far exceeds that of the Sea Bell. That's why the scene before us is like this. If it was the Sea Bell in a specific area, I'm afraid that once the bell rings, even half of the big Mara will be killed. The 4 Dharma adepts who returned to the treasure ship were Tianfeng, Tiancheng, Tianshan, and Tianyuan, the 4 mid-Dharma adepts. Seeing the scene in front of them, they did not need Lu Ping to say anything more. They were already prepared for a big battle. Just as Lu Ping finished speaking, a loud roar suddenly came from the deserted island 50 miles away. The sound waves were so loud that even the clouds floating in the sky were affected and were instantly shattered. The chaotic scene on the sea suddenly stopped. The roar seemed to have a magical power that instantly soothed the pain caused by the damage done to the Mara army by the 9-Dragon Bell. A black cloud rose from the deserted island and rolled in the direction of the treasure ship. Lu Ping exclaimed, "This is troublesome. There's actually a sky fiend on this deserted island." The appearance of the sky fiend not only surprised Lu Ping, but it also caused Jinling to fall into a panic. Although Jiang Tianlin was in the treasure cabin, the situation around the treasure ship was clearly shown on the Yingshu mirror. Should we retreat first? Jiang Tianlin was still calm. Even if the sky fiend appeared, the power of the treasure ship would be able to completely resist it. At the very least they could retreat safely. At this time, Jinling would not have to fight to the death in order to block the entrance of the ocean of storms like before. Although once Jinling retreated, the plan of the 4 sects to chase Mara out on the sea would most likely fail. The appearance of the Sky Fiend was also clearly beyond everyone's expectations. No one would blame Jinling for this. Lu Ping's eyes flashed as he stared at the black fog of the Sky Fiend that was getting closer and closer. He gritted his teeth and said, "There's no hurry. If we fight like this without fighting, wouldn't it make the sects of the Central Plains look down on the sects of the North Sea? Uncle Masters, guard the treasure ship with your lives. I will go and meet this Sky Fiend first." Liang Tianfeng said, "Are you confident? Now is not the time to show off. Why don't we retreat first and inform the Heavenly Profound sect of the situation here? The pure Yang Laozu of the Heavenly Profound sect and the Heavenly Moon sect will come to deal with it. We can also temporarily stabilize the line of defense and stop Mara from escaping to the north." Lu Ping pointed to the deserted island in the distance and said, "Uncle Master, that deserted island is not only a gathering place for Mara, but also an existence like the Sky Fiend. What do you think is on that island? Mara will not land in a place without treasures, let alone a Sky Fiend? If we wait for Chi Fan and Full Moon to come, some of the treasures on the island may fall into our hands. Wealth comes from danger, so I must give it a try no matter what." Liang Tianfeng still wanted to persuade him, but Lu Ping smiled and said, "Rest assured, Uncle Master. Even if I am not a match for the Sky Fiend, I am confident that I can escape unscathed. However, there are still 2 Azuras around the Sky Fiend to protect it, so I will need Uncle Master and the others to restrain it." At this moment, Jiang Tianlin said, "That's good too. Once there is danger, retreat to the treasure ship as soon as possible. When the time comes, you and I will work together. With the treasure ship's sturdiness, even the Sky Fiend can't do anything to us." Chapter 1421. Lu Ping hung the 9-dragon bell above his head, while the other 8 bells remained on the ship, echoing with him from afar. The dragon-shaped carvings on the bell walls swam around, as if they were extremely excited about the upcoming battle, but Lu Ping knew that they were actually afraid that they would be smashed by the sky demons and sink to the bottom of the sea. The ship moved again, cutting through the wind and waves. Whenever a Mara tried to attack, the 8 bronze bells hanging around the ship would be rung at the same time. At this time, even a blood Mara would inevitably be affected when it rushed to the front of the ship. Battles between masters were usually fought in an instant. Whether it was Liang Tianfeng, Guo Tianshan, Chu Tianqing, or Lu Tianyuan, the four mid-Dharma adepts all had rich experience in fighting on the edge of life and death, so they naturally would not let go of such a good opportunity. With Jiang Tianlin controlling the ship with all his strength and not participating in the attack, the four mid-Dharma adepts, with the help of the ship, had almost the power of a late Dharma adept. The four of them were responsible for the four corners of the ship, so they naturally would not hesitate when faced with such an opportunity. In just the first attack, 5 Blood Mara were killed, and 2 Jade Mara were injured and forced to retreat. Among them, Liang Tianfeng alone killed 2 Blood Mara and injured 1 Jade Shura. Because among the 4 of them, Liang Tianfeng was directly in front of the ship, so he suffered the greatest impact. Naturally, the results of the battle were also the greatest, but the pressure was also the heaviest. Chu Tianqing, who was on the port side of the ship, also killed 2 Blood Shura. After Tianqing Laozu recovered from his original injury, his strength could be described as increasing by leaps and bounds. Coupled with the perfection of the Inferno Sky Burning Hellish formation, his strength was currently the strongest among the 4 mid-Dharma adepts on the ship. It was just that on the sea, Tianqing Laozu's strength was somewhat restrained. Otherwise, the task of guarding the bow of the ship would not have fallen to Liang Tianfeng. Guo Tianshan, who was guarding the stern of the ship, did not kill any high-level Devil Luo. However, a Jade Devil commanded a group of Devil Luo and attempted to launch a sneak attack from the back of the ship. However, it was only a face-to-face encounter before it was injured by Guo Tianshan using the power of the treasured ship's formation. The high-level Mara could not break through the blockade of the 4 mid-Dharma adepts, and the low-level Mara did not even have the chance to get close to the treasured ship under the continuous ringing of the 8-9 dragon bells. Even if he managed to get close, he would be easily killed by the Jinling disciples around the treasured ship. The heavenly devil black fog covered half of the sky and spread toward the treasured ship. Meanwhile, the huge treasured ship also rushed toward the black fog. Seeing that the black fog was about to engulf the entire treasured ship, Lu Ping slowly rose from the treasured ship and flicked his fingers toward the 9-dragon bell in front of him. Bah! 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 Every time the enormous bell rang, it would cause the 8 bronze bells on the treasured ship to ring. Every time the bronze bells were struck, an invisible sound wave would spread out, and the black fog that covered the sky would shrink back as a result. Lu Ping struck 3 times in a row, and the bell rang 27 times on the surface of the sea. The black fog that covered the sky could not advance any further due to the ringing of the bell. 2 loud roars were heard, and the 2 Asuras around the heavenly devil were furious. They attacked the treasured ship from 2 different directions, and there were close to 10 Jade Mara following behind the 2 Asuras. However, at this time, Lu Ping suddenly broke away from the protection of the treasured ship and completely ignored the high-level Mara who attacked from both sides. Instead, he went straight for the heavenly devil that was covered by the black fog. At this time, Lu Ping's entire body was filled with tyrannical power, and the spiritual ether in his body was like a flood, setting off wave after wave of flood in his blood vessels. Although he had broken away from the protection of the treasured ship, Lu Ping's cultivation was still enhanced by the treasured ship. At this time, Lu Ping felt that he had never been so powerful before. In fact, for a moment he seemed to have touched the barrier of advancing to the pure yang stage. He felt that there was a thunder trial in the sky that was resonating with the spiritual ether in his body. That was undoubtedly the 3rd thunder trial. This meant that at this time, with the enhancement of the treasured ship, Lu Ping's cultivation had actually reached the peak of the late Dharma stage in a short period of time, and he was only 1 step away from summoning the 3rd thunder trial. The sky was filled with strange laughter, as if it was mocking Lu Ping for overestimating himself and trying to hit a rock with an egg. And there was also a hint of mockery on Lu Ping's face. The heavenly devil thought that with the interference of its soul-devouring magic, Lu Ping would definitely not be able to detect its true body hidden in the black fog. Now that Lu Ping had rashly entered the fog, he would definitely be walking into a trap. However, this heavenly devil did not know that Lu Ping had a nature-defying divine will cultivation. After receiving the enhancement of the treasured ship, his divine will had a range of nearly 200 miles. Moreover, his divine will was protected by the jade phosphor soul fire, so he was not afraid of the heavenly devil's soul-devouring magic at all. He had already determined the location of the heavenly devil's true body the moment he entered the black fog. But after all, the heavenly devil had the advantage of the heavenly devil. Just at the moment when Lu Ping entered, a few wisps of black fog immediately condensed and formed a few fog pythons that used the soul-devouring black fog as a cover and charged towards Lu Ping from all directions. However, Lu Ping was already prepared. Just as the fog pythons were about to quietly surround Lu Ping, the Sword of True Spirit released a sword chi halo around Lu Ping's body, protecting Lu Ping within it. Then, 9 water dragons rushed out from the halo in succession in all directions. Each water dragon was prepared to find the location of the soul-devouring fog python hidden in the fog. Both sides immediately began to fight, stirring up the black fog that filled the sky. The Heavenly Devil clearly did not expect Lu Ping to break through its technique so easily. It was slightly shocked and was about to attack again. However, when it came to attacking first, there were pitifully few people in the cultivation world who could match up to Lu Ping. The characteristics of his powerful and endless spiritual chi determined that Lu Ping could always be one step ahead and use more powerful techniques than ordinary people to gain the upper hand. Just at the moment when the sword light dragon rushed into the soul-devouring black fog, a brilliant light had already risen from behind Lu Ping. The purple-gold light was accompanied by a strong pure yang qi, and it dispersed the surrounding soul-devouring black fog far away. It was as if a paradise filled with vitality had opened up in the deathly silent black fog, and the brilliant light was the savior of this paradise. At the moment when the purple-gold light burst out of the soul-devouring black fog, the Heavenly Devil hidden in the soul-devouring black fog was full of disgust for this kind of aura. It instinctively wanted to guide the soul-devouring black fog to try to extinguish this light aura. However, a sharp killing intent suddenly broke through the air from the place where the light burst out. The Heavenly Devil was shocked and instinctively felt that something was wrong. It seemed that the person who broke into the soul-devouring black fog had long been aware of its hiding place, and had already found its location. Just as the Heavenly Devil was about to change its location, it suddenly found that an aura had firmly locked onto it. Then 2 blade lights cut through the thick black fog, one from the left and one from the right, strangling it. The moment Lu Ping entered the soul-devouring black fog, he had already discovered the location of the Heavenly Devil, but he did not go forward to fight at the beginning. Instead, he pretended to be a headless fly and wandered around. Just when the Heavenly Devil thought that it could easily use the soul-devouring power to kill him without anyone knowing, Lu Ping suddenly cast the pure yang spiritual treasure and found the position of the Heavenly Devil and cut it. And at the moment when the spiritual treasure was cut in half, Lu Ping had already given up on the mantis around him, and with a flash of light under his feet, he had already rushed to the place where the Heavenly Devil was previously. Suddenly letting go of the spiritual treasure at the moment it was used, although this would weaken part of the power of the spiritual treasure, but Lu Ping believed that even if he used his full strength, the blow just now might not be able to really hurt the Heavenly Devil. On the contrary, after this blow, the Heavenly Devil, who was still a little careless, would inevitably adopt a more cautious way to deal with him. It would not be easy to find it again. At this time, the most important thing was to be able to tightly catch the trace of the Heavenly Devil. Because after leaving the treasure ship, the cultivation that was blessed on Lu Ping had slowly faded. Although even if Lu Ping restored his original cultivation, he was confident that he could not be defeated by the Heavenly Devil, it was bound to waste a lot of time and attract unnecessary variables. At this time, the one who wanted to end the battle as soon as possible was Lu Ping himself. Sure enough, although the blow of the pure yang spiritual treasure made the Heavenly Devil suffer a loss, in fact, it did not really hurt the Heavenly Devil. After blocking the strangulation of the scissors, the Heavenly Devil couldn't care less about the damage of the spiritual treasure itself. It was eager to use the soul-devouring black fog to hide again. It had already noticed that the opponent in front of it was difficult to deal with. However, at this moment, a tyrannical divine thought forcibly pushed away the invasion of the soul-devouring black fog on the divine thought. Under the protection of the green soul fire, it firmly locked the trace of the Heavenly Devil. This time, the Heavenly Devil was a little flustered. It did not expect that the person in front of it would be so difficult to deal with. The soul-devouring black fog shrank and condensed again. A fortress-like fog city instantly formed, firmly isolating Lu Ping outside the city. Even Lu Ping did not dare to attack with divine thought. The soul-devouring black fog was born to restrain divine thought. It was already very lucky that Lu Ping could use the green soul fire to protect his divine thought from being eroded in the fight against the Heavenly Devil. Occasionally he could use his divine thought to attack the soul-devouring black fog from a distance. But when facing the fog wall condensed by the Heavenly Devil with most of the soul-devouring black fog, he would be courting death if he attacked blindly. But at this time, Lu Ping suddenly reached out to the top of his head. Unknowingly, a dark cloud also condensed above the soul-devouring black fog. Rumble. A huge gourd flashed in the thunder and lightning in the dark cloud. Then, a heavy downpour came from the sky, instantly washing away the fog wall in front of him. With the triple light sacred water as the medium, and the 7 treasures thunder gourd to activate the art of clouds and rain, Lu Ping held the pure yang spiritual treasure in his hand and blocked the heavenly devil who had lost the protection of the soul-devouring black fog wall. Chapter 1422. Lu Ping's storm-like attacks made the heavenly demon tremble in fear. However, the heavenly demon did not know that Lu Ping was making use of the time to strike fear into the heavenly demon before his cultivation level dropped. The heavenly demon was terrified of Lu Ping. Just as the triple light sacred water washed away the heavenly demon's fog wall, Lu Ping stood in front of the heavenly demon with the pure yang spiritual treasure in his hand. The 2 ends of the praying mantis did not know what fear was. It only liked it when Lu Ping used its 2 big blades to cut everything in front of it in half. And Lu Ping did as it wished. The moment he stood in front of the heavenly demon, he had already taken out the pure yang spiritual treasure. As he opened the scissors, 2 blade lights were already aimed at the heavenly demon. At such a close distance, under Lu Ping's divine telekinesis, the heavenly demon was almost in a situation where it could not dodge. However, the heavenly demon still chose to retreat. Although the accompanying spiritual treasure in his hand might have surpassed the second tribulation spiritual treasure in terms of power and quality, it was still a companion spiritual treasure. It could not be compared to a spiritual treasure of the same level that had been tempered by the thunder tribulation. Previously, in order to resist the pure yang spiritual treasure's attack, the heavenly demon had to use the companion spiritual treasure to take the attack of the praying mantis. It even caused some damage to the companion spiritual treasure and suffered a great loss. This time, in such a close confrontation, the heavenly demon still could not avoid the pure yang spiritual treasure's attack. The heavenly demon still had to take the attack head-on. However, the heavenly demon could take the opportunity to retreat. Although the pure yang spiritual treasure's attack was powerful, it was not easy to injure the heavenly demon. The companion spiritual treasure in the heavenly demon's hand was a cloud of constantly changing fog. It looked weak, but in fact it was extremely tough and changeable. Just as Lu Ping's scissors approached, the cloud of fog had already set up 9 fog shields in front of it. The blade light closed and the 9 fog shields were broken one by one. But the sky demon behind the fog shields had already escaped silently. Lu Ping could only see its back from afar. However, even though Lu Ping was not in the mood to fight to the death with the sky demons, he wanted to seize the opportunity to chase after the sky demons and drive them into the southern sea region. After that, occupying the deserted island that could attract the sky demons was the most important thing for him to do. Lu Ping turned into a stream of light, making contact with the clouds in the sky as he flew forward. He followed closely behind the heavenly demon. Next, Lu Ping entered the void space before him. When he reappeared, he was already behind the heavenly demon. Although the heavenly demon was fleeing, it could clearly see what was happening behind it. Faced with Lu Ping's spatial divine ability, the heavenly demon released a faint mist. This mist also entered the void. When it appeared again, it had already wrapped around the sword of true spirit's hilt. Then it firmly held Emoli in place. As expected, although the spiritual treasure had broken into 2 and cut through the 9 fog shields, the spiritual treasure in the heavenly demon's hands was not completely damaged even though it had been weakened. The sword of true spirit, which was bound, was helpless against the heavenly demon's escape. When Lu Ping arrived, the heavenly demon had already completely escaped from Lu Ping's control. Looking at Emoli, who was still struggling in front of him, Lu Ping casually suppressed the mist that was wrapped around the sword hilt. Then he looked at the mist that was constantly struggling and changing in front of him. Lu Ping could not help but reveal a trace of surprise. Then he stored the mist in the 7 thunder treasures calabash. Previously, Lu Ping's pure yang spiritual treasure had not been able to cause any damage to the heavenly demon's spiritual treasure. However, he did not expect that in order to escape, the heavenly demon would be willing to separate a part of its spiritual treasure's origin to hold Lu Ping back. After all, it was the origin essence of a spiritual treasure. Although it could not become a spiritual treasure on its own, it was an excellent item that could be used to improve the quality of other treasures. The 7 thunder treasures calabash had already reached a new bottleneck. This origin essence of a spiritual treasure would be of great help in improving the thunder calabash's quality. Although the heavenly demon had completely escaped from Lu Ping's control, Lu Ping still followed the heavenly demon's escape trail for thousands of miles. Only when he was sure that the heavenly demon was completely terrified and had fled to the southern sea did he turn around and return to the sea near the deserted island. The The battle here had already subsided when Lu Ping defeated the heavenly demon. Although the attack of the two Asuras leading several Jade Mara had put a lot of pressure on the ship, with Jiang Tianlin's control and the support of the ship, the 4 mid-Dharma adepts on the ship were able to defend against the attack of the two Asuras. After that, Jiang Tianlin and Laozu suddenly attacked and killed 3 Jade Mara consecutively. Immediately after that, the black fog of the heavenly demon suddenly shrank and dissipated. Lu Ping had actually defeated the heavenly demon, causing the Mara in the sea to lose its will to fight. First, the Jade Mara who had survived the 9 dragon bells, fled in the direction that the heavenly demon had retreated. Following that, the Jade Mara who had surrounded the ship, was also frightened by Jiang Tianlin's attacks. In the end it abandoned the two Asuras and retreated. At this time, the two Asuras also knew that they had lost the advantage. When Jiang Tianlin was about to attack one of the Asuras again, the two Asuras retreated at the same time as if they had agreed on it. After Lu Ping returned, the ship was already cruising around the deserted island. At the same time, it began to eliminate the Mara who were still hiding in the surrounding sea. It was only after Lu Ping returned that Jinling prepared to go to the island. However, they did not encounter too much danger on the island. Although there were still many Mara hiding, under the suppression of Lu Ping and the various Dharma adepts, Laozu, they quickly escaped or died. The entire island was quickly occupied by Jinling after more than half a day of clearing. After that, perfected Xianwei began to lead the sect's cultivators to begin a large-scale survey of the island. Meanwhile, Lu Ping returned to the ship. "We still have to inform the other sects about the heavenly demon," Jiang Tianlin agreed. Jiang Tianlin agreed, "This is not a small matter and we can't hide it. I've already sent out the news and I believe that the Profound Sky sect and the Moon sect will soon have a response. I've already informed my own sect to postpone advancing. I believe that because of the Sky Demon, the other sects won't blame us. Next, we'll use all our strength to investigate this deserted island and see what's strange about it. There's only one Sky Demon here." Lu Ping hesitated for a moment and said, "I am afraid that we cannot hide the matter of the deserted island. After all, this is the Heavenly Profound Sect's territory. Although Mara was wreaking havoc on the sea, the Heavenly Profound Sect still has many hidden sentries in this sea region to monitor." Jiang Tianlin said, "Of course. We don't plan on hiding it from the other sections. We just want to be first. No matter what we discover on the island, our sect can't monopolize it. However, our sect can get a part of it first and the other sects can't say anything. This is an unwritten rule in the cultivation world." At this moment, Lu Tianyuan walked into the ship. There was a sliver of excitement on his face. He said, "There is news from the deserted island. A spiritual stone mine has been discovered. Go and have a look." "A spiritual stone mine?" Jiang Tianlin was stunned. "It has only been half a day. So fast?" Lu Ping was also stunned. However, the two of them were thinking very quickly. They were both thinking about how to hide this news for as long as possible so that Jinling could obtain more benefits. The two of them looked at each other and understood each other's thoughts. However, at this time they still had to go to the island to investigate. It would be best if they could confirm the grade of the spiritual stone mine. However, the grade of the spiritual stone mine should not be low since everyone on the island could not wait to send the news back. Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin quickly arrived at the deserted island. Spiritual Master Xianwei was already waiting there with a face full of excitement. When he saw Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin descending, he quickly went forward and tried to suppress the excitement on his face. He said, "A treasured island. This is a treasured island." Lu Ping's face lit up. He said, "What grade is the spiritual stone mine?" Spiritual Master Xuanwei's suppressed voice was filled with joy. He said, "It is a large spiritual stone mine." "What?" Even though Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin were prepared, they could not help but exclaim when they confirmed the news. Spiritual Master Xianwei seemed to have predicted their expressions. He immediately changed his expression and said, "Unfortunately," at this time even Lu Ping could not stay calm. He hurriedly said, "Unfortunately what?" Spiritual Master Xianwei was very satisfied that he could control the atmosphere of the scene and make the two great cultivators look nervous. However, he also knew that he should stop while he was ahead in front of the two. He immediately explained, "Unfortunately, this spiritual stone mine was severely damaged by Mara. It almost dropped a grade. Although we managed to chase away Mara and barely maintain the grade of a large spiritual stone mine, compared to the rich mines on Frost Island, this one can only be considered a poor mine." The so-called poor mine in a large spiritual stone mine meant that the ratio of top-grade spirit stones in this spiritual stone mine was extremely low. Frost Island's spiritual stone mine not only produced a high amount of spirit stones, the ratio of top-grade spirit stones it contained was also not low. It was truly a rich mine. However, the spiritual stone mine in front of them could only barely reach the standard of a large spiritual stone mine. Moreover, due to the destruction caused by Mara's army, the ratio of top-grade spirit stones produced was extremely low. Moreover, there's more than just a spiritual stone vein on this deserted island. The entire deserted island is a huge associated spiritual stone vein. Apart from this large spiritual stone vein, there was originally another large spiritual stone vein in the associated spiritual stone vein. However, it was also ruined by Mara. Now that the main spiritual stone vein has been destroyed, the spiritual stone vein has flowed into the other 7 branches. There are only 7 medium-sized spiritual stone veins left on the island that are distributed in different directions. Lu Ping glanced at spiritual master Xianwei. Lu Ping, who had calmed down, immediately saw through this guy's thoughts. He glared at him and said, "What else is there? Say it all in one go." Taoist Profound Wei chuckled and said, "Presently we've discovered traces of a few other ore veins on the island, but we haven't had the time to specifically investigate them. What ore veins are they? Their grade and the size of the reserves haven't been determined yet. But what we can be sure of is that this small island is indeed a treasure island worthy of its name." At this time, Jiang Tianlin asked, "Why didn't the Sky Profound sect discover such a treasure island before?" Chapter 1423. At this time, Jiang Tianlin suddenly asked, "Such a treasure island is only about 2,000 miles away from the coast of Tianxian sect. With Tianxian sect's strength, why didn't they investigate their own island? Why didn't they discover it before?" Enlightened Master Xianwei seemed to be prepared for this and said, "I wonder if Uncle Master noticed the vegetation on the island when you arrived on this deserted island?" Jiang Tianlin and Lu Ping were stunned. What did this have to do with the vegetation on the deserted island? Enlightened Master Xianwei continued to explain, "Although the vegetation on this deserted island was destroyed by Mara, the age of its growth is extremely limited. At least a few years, at most a few decades. When I was investigating the land veins of this deserted island, I discovered that the land veins of this island had undergone a drastic change in the past few decades. I suspect that this deserted island rose from the bottom of the sea because of an earthquake or volcanic eruption in the past few decades. In addition, the past few decades have been the period when Mara was wreaking havoc on the sea. It is normal that Tianxian sect didn't discover the treasure on this deserted island." Enlightened Master Xuanwei's explanation cleared up everyone's doubts. The exploration on the deserted island continued, and good news was passed to Jiang Tianlin and Lu Ping from time to time on the treasure ship. So far, Enlightened Master Xianwei had confirmed that there was a large spirit stone vein, 7 medium spirit veins, and 8 associated veins on the deserted island. Furthermore, the reserves of the veins were extremely rich. There were 17 types of spirit stones confirmed, and 10 of them were of extremely high quality. They were extremely rare and precious spiritual materials in the cultivation world. Enlightened Master Xianwei was right to say that this deserted island was a treasure island. 2/3 of the Jinling disciples on the treasure ship had rushed to the deserted island to prepare for the mining of the various veins. At the same time, they occupied 2 medium spirit veins in the northeast of the deserted island and started to build garrisons. The spirit stone vein that had long been excavated by Mara's army had also started to be restored and mined. At this time, Enlightened Master Xianwei had become the busiest person in Jinling. In the entire Jinling, other than Jiang Tianlin and Lu Ping, everyone, including the Dharma adepts, listened to his orders. The development of the entire treasure island was planned and handled by him alone. Inside the treasure cabin, Jiang Tianlin said, "We can't hide this matter any longer. This treasure island isn't something our sect can swallow alone." Lu Ping nodded and said, "The treasure ship has been docked for another 2 days. The top priority is to do what we have planned before. This time, all the sects have joined hands to face the Crystal Palace. We can't wait any longer." Jiang Tianlin said, "If that's the case, let's inform the Profound Sky sect about the discovery of the island. Sooner or later the other sects will find out about it. Since that's the case, why don't we be a bit more generous and take the initiative to inform the Profound Sky sect, Heavenly Moon sect, Sky Splitting sect, and Carefree sect to jointly control the island with our sect?" I believe that the alliance of the 5 great sects will be enough to resist the cultivation world's greed for this island. Lu Ping agreed and said, indeed, in terms of spirit stone mines, the treasure island isn't as good as the frost island. However, if we include the other spirit stone mines, the variety, quality, and reserves far surpass the frost island. To be honest, this treasure island was first discovered by our sect. Now that we have to take the initiative to invite all the sects to share the benefits, I am more or less unwilling. Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, sharing the benefits also means sharing the risks. This treasure island isn't something our sect can swallow alone. However, our sect has already gained the upper hand. According to the rules of the cultivation world, before the matter of the Crystal Palace is completed, this treasure island should be under our sect's custody. With this buffer period, I believe that Master Xianwei will be able to achieve some results. Furthermore, our sect will also be able to get a bit more when we divide the profits in the future. This is already not bad. Then leave Master Uncle Gua, Master Uncle Tianshu, and a group of our disciples to stay on the island to assist Master Xianwei. The others will continue to stay on the treasure ship and chase away Mara, who is on the sea according to the plan. All right. Sure enough, when Jinling's sect discovered the treasure island, it quickly caused a commotion in the Tianxian sect. A large spirit stone mine and several high-grade spirit material mine were enough to attract the covetous eyes of the entire cultivation world. The Profound Sky sect also knew that this matter was of great importance and immediately notified the Heavenly Moon sect, Skyrend, and Carefree Pavilion. However, because of the unexpected incident of the Sky Demon appearing at the same time and the large-scale mobilization of the 5 sects, it had already attracted the attention of the cultivation world. The Crystal Palace was also on guard. Currently, the various sects couldn't find the time to discuss the matter of the treasure island. They wanted to complete all the arrangements before the Crystal Palace could react. Thus, the matters of the treasure island could only be temporarily entrusted to Jinling. Just when Jinling and the Profound Sky sect were working together to chase Mara south in the sea, the Heavenly Moon sect simultaneously changed their previous action of defending the coast. From the coastline they began to advance in a large scale into the sea, all the way until they were 1,000 miles deep into the sea. This was also the distance that the Heavenly Moon sect had shrunk to when they were being suppressed by the Crystal Palace. Until the disaster of Mara broke out on the sea, the Heavenly Moon sect, in order to turn the disaster of Mara into a barrier that blocked the Crystal Palace, simply withdrew all of their strength from the sea to the shore. This time the Heavenly Moon sect attacked again. The Pure Yang cultivator, Full Moon Laozu, personally took command and once again pushed the battle line to 1,000 miles deep into the sea. At the same time, Mara's army that had been driven south from the northern sea poured in. The Heavenly Moon sect, who had long been prepared, firmly guarded their own sea defense line. Further south of the Heavenly Moon sect's sea was the ocean of storms that led to the South Sea. There was no entrance to the South Sea, so Mara's army was completely squeezed in the narrow and long sea between the Heavenly Moon sect and the ocean of storms. In this sea, because the Crystal Palace was unwilling to give up their goal of penetrating deep into the Middle Land, they had never withdrawn the cultivators stationed in the East Sea. Instead, they built garrisons on islands of all sizes in this sea, tenaciously resisting the Mara's rampage on the sea. In the process of fighting with Mara, the main force of the Crystal Palace cultivators, led by the Pure Yang cultivator Yuan Deng Laozu, to invade the Middle Land, although they had paid a great price in the process of fighting with Mara, they still left many garrisons of the Crystal Palace above the sea of the Heavenly Moon sect. Once the disaster of Mara was eliminated, the Crystal Palace could use these garrisons to launch a fierce counterattack against the Heavenly Moon sect. Taking advantage of the fact that the Holy Lands of the Middle Land were busy with their own affairs, the Crystal Palace's power could penetrate deep into the Middle Land and lay down a foundation. However, after the Heavenly Moon sect re-advanced on the sea, the Mara in the sea suddenly became denser because of the Heavenly Moon sect's driving, and the attacks on the garrisons of the Crystal Palace became more and more frequent. However, after a long time of fighting with the Mara, the cultivators of the Crystal Palace easily repelled the Mara's attacks on the garrisons and did not take it seriously. However, because they were trapped in the sea of the Heavenly Moon sect for a long time, they could not detect the schemes of the Heavenly Moon sect and other sects in time. When the Mara in the northern sea went south, the number of Mara in the whole sea increased by several times, and Yuan Deng Laozu and the others finally realized that something was wrong. The garrisons of the Crystal Palace on several islands had already fallen under the fierce attacks of Mara. Yuan Deng Laozu was sent by the Crystal Palace to preside over the plan of expanding the territory of the Middle Earth, naturally because he was outstanding. At this time he had already instinctively discovered the existence of danger, and immediately decided to lead the remaining cultivators of the Crystal Palace back to the East Sea. However, as early as a few days ago, the two treasured ships of the Carefree Pavilion and Skyrend had been cruising in the East Sea under various pretexts. When they passed by the entrance of the storm ocean between the East Sea and the Middle Earth, they changed their course at the same time and plunged into the storm ocean. When the Crystal Palace realized that something was wrong, it was also when Yuan Deng Laozu was preparing to retreat to the East Sea. At this time, at the entrance of the storm ocean between the Sea of the Heavenly Moon Sect and the East Sea, two treasured ships appeared at the same time. On the treasured ships, there was Xiao Baiyu, the sword sage of the sky splitting, and they blocked the return route of the Crystal Palace. At this time, it also marked that Skyrend and the Carefree Pavilion had completely fallen out with the Crystal Palace. Yuan Deng Laozu, who got the news, was so angry that he cursed loudly. However, he still did not dare to lead the remaining cultivators of the Crystal Palace to fight against the two treasured ships, not to mention that Xiao Baiyu was there. In desperation, Yuan Deng Laozu had to take the risk to break through the north. However, unexpectedly at the same time the extraterrestrial demons which had been driven south by Lu Ping, the treasured ships, and Qifan Laozu finally met the army of Mara in the Sea of the Heavenly Moon Sect at an appropriate time. They encountered the cultivators of the Crystal Palace who were as panic-stricken as stray dogs. A great battle unfolded when both sides were extremely unwilling but unable to break free. 5 days later, when the two treasured ships of the Crystal Palace, which were led by two pure young cultivators, passed through the storm ocean and arrived at the Sea of the Heavenly Moon Sect, they faced the three treasured ships of the True Spirit Sect, the Carefree Pavilion, and the Sky-Splitting Sect. The three pure young cultivators, Qifan, Full Moon and Xiao Baiyu, as well as Lu Tianping, who had become even more famous after defeating the extraterrestrial demons. Behind them was the boundless sea of the Heavenly Mystery Sect, which was as calm as a mirror. Above this sea, the rampaging Mara, the ambitious Yuan Deng Laozu, and the other cultivators of the Crystal Palace had all sunk to the bottom of the sea and become food for the fish and shrimps. The two treasured ships of the Crystal Palace finally retreated with hatred. This also meant that the plan of the Crystal Palace to enter the Central Plains had suffered a major blow, and all their previous efforts had gone down the drain. The Crystal Palace then set off a storm of blood in the East Sea. The Carefree Pavilion suffered one setback after another under the suppression of the Crystal Palace, and their sphere of influence continued to shrink. Skyrend, on the other hand, was only at a slight disadvantage in the struggle against the Crystal Palace. But soon, the Dharma adepts of the Heavenly Moon Sect appeared on the Carefree Island and helped in the struggle against the Crystal Palace. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mystery Sect also frequently appeared in the sphere of influence of Skyrend. Soon after, the new large sect of the North Sea, Jinling, suddenly made a series of moves in the Parish Mystic realm. After connecting the Sea of the Waking Island and the Sea of the Listening Wave Island, and having a stable foundation, the 9 Dharma adepts of the Jinling, led by Jiang Tianlin, Mei Tianqin and Guo Tianshan, went south to the East Sea and took control of the Three Families Island. They deterred the various forces in the sphere of influence of the former Northern Alliance and supported the Carefree Pavilion. Chapter 1424. At the entrance of the stormy ocean of the Heavenly Moon Sect Sea region, the confrontation with the Crystal Palace's treasured ship caused the alliance of the 5 sects to become closer. When Xiao Baiyu proposed the plan to wipe out the Crystal Palace's forces in the Central Sea region, Lu Ping also asked for Jiang Tianlin's opinion. However, Jiang Tianlin did not hesitate like Lu Ping and readily agreed to this request. Lu Ping also asked for the reason, and Jiang Tianlin's explanation was very simple. Jinling could not be trapped in the North Sea and not make any progress. However, if it really wanted to leave the North Sea, it would inevitably disrupt the original power structure, and it was only a matter of time before it made enemies with others. Since it was inevitable to offend people, why would they go and provoke others? They might as well offend the people they already had enmity with even more. In the process of Jinling's rise, it had encountered the Crystal Palace's obstruction, whether overt or covert. The two sides had already formed enmity. Even if Jinling did not provoke the Crystal Palace would not allow Jinling to dominate the North Sea. The Fei Ling sect 4,000 years ago was a good example. Now it was just making this enmity deeper. Moreover, Jinling was not fighting alone. This choice allowed Jinling to gain 4 powerful allies outside of the North Sea, so why not? Back then, Lu Ping could also hear Jinling's ambition from Jiang Tianlin's words. However, this ambition was exactly what Lu Ping was happy to see. On the central square of Tianxian City, the huge teleportation array had already reached the final stage. After Junling's array master and Tianxian sect's array master worked together to incorporate the teleportation array into Tianxian City's defense system, Junling's ultra-long-distance large-scale teleportation array was finally successfully set up. This also meant that the last link on the surface for Junling to become a large sect had been completed. This large-scale teleportation array was connected to the North Sea's Tianling Mountain and could teleport 20 people at once. On the teleportation array, there were 404 indentations for spirit stones. The 4 indentations on the 4 sides were separated from the 4 indentations in the center. In other words, each activation of the teleportation array required 400 high-grade spirit stones or 4 top-grade spirit stones. The cost wasn't low, but Lu Ping recalled the small teleportation array that led directly to Yingshan's side courtyard. Not only could it only teleport one person at a time, but it also required a top-grade spirit stone to activate. Even after spiritual master Xianxin modified the teleportation array, it could only teleport 2 or 3 people at a time. Compared to that, the teleportation array could only teleport 1 person at a time, and each activation required 1 high-quality spirit stone. Not long after the ultra-long-distance teleportation array was successfully set up, the entire teleportation array suddenly flashed with a dazzling white light. This was a sign that the teleportation array had been activated. At this time, the cultivators from Tianxian sect who came to watch the show realized that there were many high-level cultivators from Tianxian sect. Qing Li Laozu, Lian Nan Laozu, Wu Lu Laozu, and others who were rarely seen gathered in front of the teleportation array. It seemed like they were waiting for someone. Finally, after the light flashed, Junling's group of 20 people appeared on the teleportation array in Tianxian City under the lead of Sect Master Lu Tianling. Qing Li Laozu suddenly laughed and said, "Welcome, Sect Master Junling. Tianxian sect has failed to welcome you." It was only then that the cultivators of Tianxian City who came to watch the show realized that this graceful middle-aged woman was actually the sect leader of Junling's sect, the famous North Sea water sword immortal, Lu Tianping's master. Lu Ping hurriedly introduced everyone from Tianxian sect to his master. Lu Tianling smiled and said, "Thank you seniors for waiting. Junior Lu Tianling has been impolite." Qing Li Laozu said, "Sect Master Lu is too polite. Now that our 2 sects have formed an alliance, we should be close to each other. Sect Master is too polite." Lu Tianling also smiled and said, "Then I am too polite." Qing Li Laozu laughed and said, "Sect Master Lu, please." "Senior, please." The Profound Sky sect clearly attached great importance to the visit of Zhenling sect's sect master. Aside from a few great cultivators who personally went to the teleportation array to welcome him, when Lu Tianling arrived at the dojo of the Profound Sky sect, Old Ancestor 7 fans was already waiting outside the dojo. No matter how magnanimous Lu Tianling was, he still felt somewhat flattered. After the leaders of the 2 sects had a secret discussion, Junling officially announced to the cultivation world that he had become a large sect. Lu Ping originally thought that this was the end of the sect's business. The remaining matters might be complicated, but he didn't need to worry about them. Just as he was thinking about where to bring Qi Lianing to have fun, Lu Tianling unexpectedly told him to accompany her to visit Tianxian sect. Only then did Lu Ping know that Junling was going to set up 2 super long-distance teleportation arrays in the Middle Earth, and the other one was in Chanwan City of Tianxian sect. There were 1 small matter and 2 big matters to attend to in this trip to the Heavenly Moon sect. The small matter concerned the marriage between Lu Tianyuan and the 3rd-generation direct disciple of the Heavenly Moon sect, Chan Xiang. Behind this matter was naturally the maintenance of the alliance between the 2 sections. Lu Tianling personally went to propose, which also showed the respect and importance that the Zhenling sect placed on the Heavenly Moon sect. However, Lu Ping was secretly ridiculing him. He knew that although this senior Lu seemed to be an honest person, in reality, not only was he in love with senior Chan Xiang from the Heavenly Moon sect, he also seemed to be exchanging flirtatious glances with senior Chan Yu. Moreover, what made Lu Ping even more amazed was that these 2 senior sisters seemed to have taken a liking to his senior Lu at the same time. Moreover, from the beginning to the end, these 2 sisters had never gotten into any romantic disputes because they liked the same person. Lu Ping couldn't help but fiercely ridicule behind his back. Could it be that they wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Unfortunately, only one of the 2 could become Lu Tianyuan's Dao companion. Tianxian sect definitely wouldn't give their 2 direct disciples to 1 person as Dao companions, and Junling also couldn't disregard the dignity of Tianxian sect. However, he didn't know how his senior Lu would choose. Could it be that he was really going to take one away and leave the other heartbroken? Secretly, Lu Ping was already extremely jealous. Now that he saw Senior Lu frowning all day long, he couldn't help but feel happy in his heart. Who asked you to be fickle? This time you've gone too far. However, he didn't realize that he also had a black fox at home, yet he brought Qi Lianing everywhere to play outside. Compared to his senior Lu, he was probably even worse. The second important matter was that the leaders of the 5 sects would take this opportunity to hold an alliance meeting in Tianxian sect. They would announce to the cultivation world that the 5 sects had successfully formed an alliance. They would rise or fall together. In reality, it was an alliance to attack and defend against the Crystal Palace. The third matter was to discuss the distribution of the various cultivation resources on the treasured island discovered in Tianxian sect's sea region. After knowing the third matter, Lu Ping already knew why his teacher had asked him to accompany him to Tianxian sect. He wanted to bring him there to demonstrate. Although the 5 sects were equal, in reality they still had to be ranked. In terms of time, Junling was the last to be established and had the weakest foundation. Naturally, it should be ranked last among the sects without a sect. However, in terms of the number of Dharma adepts and high-level battle power, Junling was completely above Xiaoyao Pavilion. Even when compared to Tianxian sect, they were almost on par. As for Skyrind, if it wasn't for Xiao Baiyu with Junling's current strength, even Skyrind would be inferior to it. However, Junling looked at the other 4 sects in this way. In reality, when the other 4 sects looked at Junling, they were also at a loss. If it was only based on the cultivation of the various sects' high-level cultivators, Junling's current strength was above Xiaoyao Pavilion, and it was ranked 4th among the 5 sections. However, Junling had produced Lu Tianping, a freak who was even more monstrous than Xiao Baiyu. Before the conclusion of Yan Jiuxiao's death had yet to be determined, this guy had already crossed the ocean of storms with his physical body. Just when the cultivation world was exclaiming in shock that the Northern Sea Water Sword Immortal was about to become a pure Yang cultivator, this guy had actually single-handedly defeated a heavenly devil in the sea region of the Heavenly Profound sect, and he himself was completely unharmed. This was not something that a quasi-pure Yang cultivator could do. This was simply a genuine pure Yang cultivator. Thinking back to the time when 8th Sister Zhu of the 9 Profound Tower had narrowly escaped death to assassinate a heavenly demon, even though 8th Sister Zhu had not only faced a heavenly demon, she had used assassination, and not a face-to-face battle like Lu Ping. Moreover, after successfully assassinating the heavenly demon, 8th Sister Zhu had also been heavily injured, and even when the 9 Profound Tower announced that they were sealing off the mountain, her condition did not improve. With Lu Ping around, how would the status of the 5 sects be determined? The astute Lu Tianling was naturally aware of this, so she had strictly ordered Lu Ping to follow her to the Heavenly Moon sect this time, in order to clear Junling's name. This kind of matter was related to the status of the sects, and it might even affect the distribution of resources on the island. Naturally, Lu Ping would not refuse, and could only helplessly let Qi Lianing wait in Tianxian City for a period of time. In reality, after the Heavenly Moon sect's alliance meeting, the people in charge of the 5 sects did not give in to each other regarding the allocation of cultivation resources on the island. Although they had formed an alliance, this did not mean that they would easily give up on their own benefits. Lu Ping had participated in the entire negotiation process from beginning to end. Even though he was dizzy from all the arguments and was confused by all kinds of sharp words, he had no choice but to force himself to be entangled with the crafty old foxes of the various sections. In the end, the various sects finally reached an agreement. The Heavenly Profound sect was the sect with the most profound strength and resources among the 5 sects, and the island was within the sea region under their jurisdiction. They could roughly get about a quarter of the entire island's cultivation resources, but the Heavenly Profound sect also had to fulfill the responsibility of providing the main protection for the entire island. As the discoverer of the island, Junling drove away the heavenly demon entrenched on the island, preventing the loss of the large spirit stone vein on the island. However, he also paid the price of not a small number of cultivators from the sect. Furthermore, he generously reported the situation of the island to the other sects, so each sect more or less owed him. In addition, Junling had displayed a strength that made people wholeheartedly submit to him, and in the end he was able to get a quarter of the island's cultivation resources. Originally, Lu Tianling even took the initiative to propose to share the defense of the island with the Heavenly Profound sect, but it was rejected by Qingli Laozu without even thinking. What a joke! The Crystal Palace had tried every possible way to send their strength deep into the Middle Earth, but to no avail. Junling was able to so easily send his strength deep into the heavenly profound Sect C region, and he still had to carry the good reputation of risking his life for his allies? The good things in the world could not be completely monopolized by the Junling family. Chapter 1425. The Tianxian sect and the Junling clan took up half of the resources on the island. Of the remaining half, the Tianyue sect took 20%. However, the Tianyue sect and the Tianxian sect had to bear the main responsibility of guarding the island. These two sects belonged to the training world of the Central Plains, so they did not have any scruples against the overseas sections. Thus, the Tianyue sect was naturally willing to have someone to assist them in guarding the island. The remaining 30% was divided equally between the Carefree Pavilion and the Skyrind clan. These two sects did not contribute much to the discovery, mining and protection of the island. However, as the nominal owners of the island, only these 5 sects working together could resist the covetous eyes of the various forces in the training world. From this point of view, the two sects had a clear conscience in taking 15% of the resources. Although the protection of the island was mainly handed over to the Tianxian sect and the Tianyue sect, the 3 overseas sects still had to send Dharma adepts to guard the island. Firstly, it was to assist the 2 sects in guarding the island. Secondly, it was to declare their ownership of the island. At the same time, they had to supervise the mining process of all the mineral veins on the island. After the 5 sects met at the Tianyue sect, the leaders of the various sects returned to their own sects and began to deploy troops according to the wishes of the sections. The Junling clan stopped at the island before returning to the North Sea to complete the handover with the practitioners from the Tianxian sect and the Tianyue sect. At the same time, they sent the various training resources that had been mined from the island under the overall planning of spiritual master Xianwei onto the ship. They also left behind Tianshu Laozu and 10 core forging practitioners as the representatives of the Junling clan to the island. Then they returned with a full load. At the same time, they returned to the North Sea with a bride from the Tianyue sect. After that, the 5 sects took action one after another. They adopted an obviously unified pace and began to work together to resist the counterattack of the Crystal Palace. Several large-scale conflicts occurred in the East Sea, causing the situation in the training world of the entire East Sea to become tense. In the conflicts, both sides suffered losses, but overall they maintained a stalemate. However, in the eyes of the various forces in the training world, the holy lands of the East Sea, which had always been arrogant and expanding everywhere in the training world, had suffered a loss this time. It was only then that people realized that ever since the calamity of Mara began to gradually disappear, the situation in the entire world of cultivation had undergone a huge change. First, the demon clan of the Endless Mountain seized the opportunity when Mara's army attacked and occupied the Magic Cloud City in one fell swoop, breaking the blockade of the Lingyun Valley on the Endless Mountain Range, and forming a suppression on the Lingyun Valley. Soon after, the Wuxing school was discovered stealing the Qingming River's water vein. They suffered heavy losses at the foot of Luo Xian Mountain and even lost a weapon spirit of the heaven-opening artifact that they used to protect their luck. After that, the 9 Profound Tower encountered an unprecedented calamity from Mara. After 10 years of encirclement, the 9 Profound Tower's vitality was greatly damaged. They had no choice but to ally with the other sects to break through Mara's encirclement, and after that they announced that they would seal off their sect. Immediately after that, the Purple Sun Palace encountered a situation similar to that of the Lingyun Valley. The entire demon clan of the Northwest joined forces to suppress the West Wilderness. The large sect supported by the Purple Sun Palace, the West Wilderness Palace, was destroyed, and the entire West Wilderness became a paradise for the demon clan. However, before the training world could take a breather, the sects of the South Sea suddenly fell out with the Skyward Pavilion. Then, the Bagui clan suddenly intervened in the battle between the two sides, causing the Skyward Pavilion to be unable to take care of itself in the south. Now the 5 major sects Tianxian, Tianyue, Junling, Sky-Splitting and Xiaoyao suddenly plotted against the Crystal Palace, causing the Crystal Palace's forces in the central region to be wiped out, which shocked the world. Following that, the 5 major sects announced that they would form an alliance to fight against the Crystal Palace. Conflicts broke out in the East Sea's training world one after another. The Crystal Palace, which had always been the strongest in the training world, was helpless against the alliance of the 5 major sects, which shocked the entire training world. It was only then that the situation in the training world gradually became clear. People suddenly realized that the 6 sacred lands, which had led the training world for tens of thousands of years since the beginning of the world, had encountered unprecedented challenges after the calamity of Mara gradually subsided. Moreover, it seemed that the situation was not too good for them. When the 6 sacred lands encountered difficulties, the various forces in the training world, especially the sects, forces and families that were previously under the control of the 5 sacred lands, began to stir. They tried to take advantage of the fact that the influence of the sacred lands had declined to the extreme to get rid of their control. For a time, the entire training world of the central region was in turmoil. The era when the 6 sacred lands controlled the training world seemed to be a thing of the past. I didn't expect the central region to become like this, Lu Ping said to Qi Lianying, who was beside him, with a wry smile. Lu Ping had originally wanted to take Qi Lianying out to relax and travel around the central region. Unexpectedly, the central region was now in a state of chaos. In comparison, the overseas training world, especially the North Sea, had become a paradise after the Jinling sect became a major sect and formed an alliance with the 5 major sections. Watching Qi Lianying knock down the dozen or so cultivators in front of him, one after another, Lu Ping was speechless. Was this the 4th or 5th wave of bandits they had encountered along the way? In Lu Ping's opinion, these so-called bandits were just some small sects or families with legacies in disguise. However, the entire training world of the central region seemed to be out of control. Everyone hoped to strengthen themselves in a short period of time through robbery. Otherwise, they could only be robbed by others. All the sects, big or small, seemed to have fallen into such a vicious cycle. Along the way, out of consideration for their respective identities, the 2 of them concealed their cultivation bases and traveled the cultivation world as low-level cultivators. Unexpectedly, someone quickly treated the 2 of them as fat sheep and pretended to be robbers in an attempt to rob them. It was even to the extent that even though Qi Lianying's face was covered with a red veil, her graceful figure and bewitching temperament gave off a powerful charm. Coupled with the low cultivation that she revealed, it gave those robbers an additional option to rob her. After casually sending these cultivators away, Qi Lianying had a sudden impulse and looted all of the storage artifacts on the bandits. She seemed to have fallen in love with the feeling of pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Under her strong request, Lu Ping had no choice but to suppress his cultivation even more. There were 5 or 6 storage pouches hanging from his waist, and each of them was bulging. It was as if there was a label on his body that said, "I'm a fat sheep, come and rob me." Thankfully, Qi Lianying seemed to be treating this as a game. After teaching the bandits a lesson, he didn't kill them. Instead, he took all of their storage treasures. Qi Lianying. Although there was a lot of things, Lu Ping was naturally not interested in them. However, Qi Lianying was never tired of it, so Lu Ping could only let her do as she pleased. As time passed, the bandit title of Red-Clothed Rakshasa slowly began to spread in the areas they traveled. As for Lu Ping, he was gloriously ignored. When Qi Lianying heard about the title of Red-Clothed Rakshasa, she became even more proud and kept showing off to Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping secretly grumbled to himself. How did he become a Rakshasa without even killing a single person? Destruction of the Holy Land. Chapter 1426. Qi Lianying's talent was definitely very high. At least from Lu Ping's point of view, Qi Lianying's talent was no less than Lu Tianyuan's, and even comparable to Yin Tianchu's. The reason why Qi Lianying's level of practice was lower than that of the other 2 was because Qi Lianying had been seriously injured and her soul had been searched, causing her to lose all of her original memories. After being rescued by Mei Tianqin, Qi Lianying's level of practice was still there, but she was muddle-headed and could only restart her practice from scratch, which naturally delayed her progress. The other reason was that Qi Lianying had always been stuck in her heart, or rather, it was a knot in her heart. Perhaps she did not even realize this, but Lu Ping knew that it was because of this knot that she was unable to break through to the peak of the Dharma stage, even though she was only 1 step away from the peak of the Dharma stage. If she could not take this step, she would not be able to complete her practice in the early Dharma stage, and it would be even more difficult for her to advance to the mid-Dharma stage. If she were to forcefully summon the Thunder Trial, it might even cause her to fall short of success. Although Lu Ping couldn't fully understand Qi Lianying's thoughts, he could roughly guess what she was thinking. This was a knot in her heart that Lu Ping couldn't help her with. But he could find a way to help her temporarily forget about the things that were bothering her. This was the real reason why Lu Ping wanted to take her on a trip to the central mainland this time. He hoped that what they encountered on the trip would be able to alleviate the conflict in Qi Lianying's heart, or perhaps divert her attention to other things. Lu Ping had succeeded, but he did not expect the situation to be like this. Qi Lianying was very happy playing the pig to eat the tiger. With Lu Ping around, she was not afraid of the other party coming to find her. No matter what, it was much better to be lucky than to be helpless. In a tree-lined valley, a huge bronze wine cauldron floated above Qi Lianying's head. Clouds of blue mist seeped out of the cauldron and surrounded Qi Lianying, who was in the middle of cultivating. As Qi Lianying circulated her Zhen Yuan, the mist slowly but continuously seeped into her body. Lu Ping, who was guarding her from afar, could feel the rising aura around Qi Lianying and finally relaxed. Qi Lianying had accumulated enough strength to completely touch the peak of the early Dharma stage, and she was only one step away from triggering the Thunder Trial. Now, although Qi Lianying had not resolved the knot in her heart was no longer as heavy as before. In addition, Lu Ping of the past 6 months had accompanied her on her travels to the central mainland, and his knowledge and of mind were much broader than before. It was only natural for her to improve her training. It was only when the air above Qi Lianying's head began to tremble that Lu Ping suddenly stood up and walked into the valley. At the same time, his aura enveloped the entire valley like a slowly rising water level, ready to drown Qi Lianying in her training at any time and interrupt her training. At this time, Qi Lianying suddenly opened her eyes and smiled at Lu Ping. "Don't worry, I remember what you said. The Thunder Trial won't come so soon." After a pause, Qi Lianying said softly, "Thank you." With Qi Lianying's intelligence, she had actually understood why Lu Ping had accompanied her on her travels when she had broken through to the peak of the Dharma stage. Lu Ping breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I just wanted you to see the scene of the Thunder Trial in advance so you can be mentally prepared. But don't let the power of the Thunder Trial make you feel even more pressured." Lu Ping stretched out his hand, and the Linglong wine tripod that had been floating above Qi Lianying's head slowly fell into his hand. As for Linglong, when Qi Lianying had finished her training, she had already leaned on the side of the wine tripod and listened to their conversation. However, after hearing Lu Ping's words, she was immediately displeased and said, "That Linglong's Thunder Trial is for your partner to enjoy, but Linglong is about to face the second Thunder Trial. Don't scare this sister." Lu Ping laughed and smacked Linglong's head into the wine cauldron. He scolded, "You little brat, you're so smart. You've been accumulating for so many years. You've already gained so much from the Qingming River's water vein, and you've even devoured a lot of the pure Yang weapon spirit's origin essence. If you still can't overcome the second lightning tribulation, I'll just smash you into a pile of scrap metal." Linglong carefully stood on the side of the wine tripod, revealing only her eyes, and said in a low voice, "If I can't get through the Thunder Trial, I will naturally become scrap metal. There is no need for you to smash me." Lu Ping pretended to be angry and said, "What did you say?" Linglong said in a tender voice, "I want the 8 sceneries building. I want to become a pure Yang spirit treasure like the Chengquan wine tripod." Lu Ping sighed and said, "The Chengquan wine tripod regulates the world's spirit veins. If you take this path, the second tribulation spirit treasure is the top. You have heard the sects Tianlian always say that your own quality determines the hope of advancing to pure Yang. Don't think of being like the Chengquan wine tripod but can only choose one of the paths to the end. Do you want to become a second tribulation spirit treasure that is completely the same as the Chengquan wine tripod, or only have part of the Chengquan wine tripod's function, but can retain the hope of advancing to pure Yang in the future? Choose for yourself." Linglong was suddenly depressed. She didn't have a Chengquan wine cauldron imitation spirit treasure. She didn't want to become a heaven-opening divine artifact like the Chengquan wine cauldron, but she also knew that such a hope was almost hopeless. If she gave up some of its functions and walked the path of specialization, it would instead concentrate all of Linglong's advantages and preserve the possibility of advancing to the pure Yang stage. "Well, you are the master, it is up to you to decide." The dark clouds shrouded the valley, and the purple-blue lightning fell into the valley one after another, illuminating Qi Lianying's slightly pale face. Feeling the tightness of Qi Lianying's grip on his arm, Lu Ping chuckled and comforted her. "Don't worry, this is Linglong's second Thunder Trial after all. It will be more powerful than the first Thunder Trial you will summon in the future." Linglong snorted coldly and said, "I am just worried about Linglong." However, Lu Ping still felt the strength on his arm lessen a lot. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, although I have several spirit treasures, I only have 2 second tribulation spirit treasures. I will not let Linglong take the risk easily." Moreover, Linglong already had the strength to advance to a second tribulation spirit treasure more than 100 years ago. The reason why it has been delayed until now is that I have been hesitating whether to let her fuse with the Baiying Tower. Moreover, Linglong has accumulated a strong foundation over the years. If there are no accidents, this thunder trial should be more daunting than dangerous. As he spoke, the 8th thunder trial smashed into the valley like a water column pouring down from the sky. Bang! Boom! 2 loud sounds came in succession. Although the 2 were far enough away from the valley, they could still clearly feel the vibration from the ground under their feet. A solemn look appeared on Lu Ping's face. Obviously, the 8th thunder trial had injured Linglong quite badly. Her body, which was floating in the air, should have been smashed to the ground by the power of the thunder trial. However, a muffled buzzing sound came from the valley. Lu Ping's expression relaxed a little. He knew that the thunder trial just now did not cause much damage to Linglong's body. The tribulation clouds in the sky suddenly collapsed and shrunk. Then, the last thunder trial, with almost all the power of the tribulation clouds, directly fell into the valley through the void. With a loud bang, the mountains within a radius of a few miles shook. Countless boulders rolled down from the hillsides around the valley. One of the steeper hillsides directly collapsed, forming a cliff that was more than 10 feet high. Let's go and have a look. As soon as the 2 arrived in front of the valley, Lu Ping frowned slightly. On the side, Qi Lianying saw Lu Ping's expression and said worriedly, "What's wrong? Did something happen to Linglong?" Lu Ping looked calm and said, "It's nothing. It's just that there are some people who don't have eyes everywhere." In the valley, Linglong's wine cauldron was overturned on the ground. But from the flickering light around her body, it was obvious that she was not seriously injured. However, Linglong, who climbed out of the cauldron, looked much more miserable. Her whole body was emitting green smoke, her hair was standing on end, and her small face was black as if she had just come out from a pile of coal. Qi Lianying chuckled and walked forward to wipe her, but Lu Ping noticed that Linglong was able to exist outside of the wine cauldron. Before Linglong became a second tribulation spiritual treasure, she rarely left her body. Obviously, the thunder trial had reduced Linglong's dependence on her body. However, just as Qi Lianying was about to approach Linglong, a shout suddenly came from behind them. "Stop!" Qi Lianying's expression changed and he turned around to see a few rays of light descending from the valley. The person in front had a greedy look in his eyes as he stared at Linglong's wine cauldron. He said, "This is the treasure of the flowing cloud pavilion. All of you get out of here." Qi Lianying was stunned, but when he saw Lu Ping standing at the side without saying a word, he laughed and said, "What a joke. This is a spiritual treasure of the flowing cloud pavilion. Why does it belong to the flowing cloud pavilion now that it has passed the tribulation?" Lu Ping had accompanied Qi Lianying as she traveled the Central Plains. Previously, he had been fooling around with her and had concealed his level of training up to the blood condensation stage. Naturally, he did not attract the attention of the other party. Qi Lianying, on the other hand, had just reached the peak of the early Dharma stage. His Dharma aura surged and attracted everyone's attention. The person who had spoken earlier said confidently, "Nonsense. This is a second tribulation spiritual treasure. How can it belong to an early Dharma minor repairs cultivator like you? This treasure was clearly unearthed here and has undergone its second tribulation. This place is under the jurisdiction of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion, so the treasure that was unearthed naturally belongs to the Flowing Cloud Pavilion." Qi Lianying had been traveling the Central Plains for a long time and naturally knew that the Flowing Cloud Pavilion was a famous and large sect in the Central Plains. However, he did not expect the other party to be so unreasonable. However, looking at Linglong, who had just passed the tribulation, Qi Lianying could understand why these people were trying to take the treasure by force. Although they had the advantage in numbers, Qi Lianying was not afraid. Chapter 1427. The cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion was attracted by the lightning tribulation and tried to snatch Linglong's wine cauldron. Lu Ping did not say a word. Although Qi Lianying was annoyed and amused at the same time, she strangely did not resent the cultivator's actions. On the contrary, she understood the actions of Flowing Cloud Pavilion to a great extent. Qi Lianying herself was a bandit and had made a name for herself in the perished land. If she were in the shoes of the cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion, she would have made the same decision to snatch Linglong's wine cauldron. In fact, from Qi Lianying's point of view, this mid-Dharma adept from Flowing Cloud Pavilion had insisted that Linglong did not belong to Qi Lianying, but had attracted the lightning tribulation because the treasure had been unearthed. This behavior was simply too honest. If it had been her, she would have directly claimed that the treasure belonged to Flowing Cloud Pavilion and they could have just fought over it. There was no need to cover things up and leave room for argument. Even the treasure had been unearthed by itself. Qi Lianying's beautiful eyes darted around as she waved at Linglong and said, "Linglong, come here." Linglong, who had not yet recovered from the lightning tribulation, was still in a daze and did not know what had happened. When she heard Qi Lianying's call, she stood up and walked shakily to Qi Lianying. Qi Lianying looked at the cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion at the mouth of the valley and laughed mockingly. "You said that the treasure had been unearthed by itself. How is it that the spirit of the item is so familiar with me?" Long before Linglong had walked behind Qi Lianying in a daze, the face of the cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion at the mouth of the valley had already turned red. This mid-Dharma adept was one of the most outstanding disciples of the third generation of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion. It was just that he, who had grown up under the protection of the sect, had not experienced much of the trials and tribulations of the world of practice. He was completely unable to be as cunning as the older adepts who had been through many hardships. However, at this point, it was enough for the disciple from Flowing Cloud Pavilion to fly into a rage out of humiliation. This could be considered as Qi Lianying helping the disciple from Flowing Cloud Pavilion take the step from a rookie to a veteran. "Since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame my Flowing Cloud Pavilion for bullying you." Qi Lianying clapped his hands and laughed. "That's more like it. Otherwise, how could they be so domineering? But if you want to snatch this treasure, you have to ask the owner of the treasure first." The cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion was stunned. He looked at the direction Qi Lianying was pointing at and saw that the so-called target was just a blood condensation realm cultivator, minor repairs. How could he not know that Qi Lianying was just making fun of him? The face of the Flowing Cloud Hall cultivator sank. "You're messing with me? Since you fellows want to die, I might as well grant your wish." At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly asked, "Who is Yun Tian to you?" The cultivator from Flowing Cloud Pavilion, who had just gathered his strength, was taken aback, but he still answered, "Yun Tian Laozu is my martial uncle." However, the disciple from Flowing Cloud Pavilion quickly realized that the one who had called Yun Tian Laozu by his name was actually this minor repairs from the blood condensation realm. Furthermore, this minor repairs did not even look at them when he spoke. Instead, the aura he exuded caused him to unintentionally answer Lu Ping's question. The disciple immediately felt humiliated. A mere minor repairs from the blood condensation realm? Even his disciple's cultivation was higher than this minor repairs from the blood condensation realm, and this fellow actually dared to speak to him in such a manner. "Originally, I didn't want to start a massacre, but who would have thought that you wouldn't know when to stop? Don't blame me for being merciless." The direct disciple waved his hand at Lu Ping from afar. This move of his was called sneaking into the night with the wind. Although the name sounded poetic, it was a ruthless move that killed without leaving a trace. In his opinion, it was a waste to use this move on a blood condensation realm cultivator. But the direct disciple didn't think it was worth it to use this move on a blood condensation realm cultivator. "It seems that I still lack self-control. No wonder my martial uncle encouraged me to go out and explore the world." In order to establish a foothold in the cultivation world, strength was the foundation, but it wasn't the only thing. When the direct disciple attacked, he was still sighing in his heart. However, the blood condensation realm cultivator in front of him, who he had already predicted would die, stood there as if nothing had happened. The direct disciple's technique that he had tried so many times before was like a clay ox in the ocean. He had kicked an iron plate. This fellow wasn't even a blood condensation cultivator. The disciple's expression sank. He coldly said, "Who are you? Why are you provoking my Flowing Cloud Pavilion again and again? Are you trying to make an enemy out of our sect?" "Make an enemy out of me?" Lu Ping glanced coldly at the Flowing Cloud Pavilion official disciple, not bothering to hide the disdain in his eyes. "You're just a little mid-Dharma cultivator. Even if Yun Tian were here, he wouldn't dare to speak to me like this." The disciple's expression turned cold. He had just used these words to mock Qi Lianying, but now Lu Ping had used them back on him. Such arrogance. "Old man, I want to see who has the guts to look down on my Flowing Cloud Pavilion." An angry roar came from afar, and a ray of light flew towards the valley from the horizon. The corner of Lu Ping's mouth curled up in a mocking smile. Finally. As the ray of light descended, Yun Tian Laozu strode out. A few Flowing Cloud Pavilion disciples at the entrance of the valley hurried forward to greet him. Yun Tian Laozu was the only one who nodded. His expression was solemn, and he looked at the disciple with a hint of dissatisfaction. Clearly, he was dissatisfied with the disciple's delay in dealing with the matter in the valley. Yun Tian Laozu was considered one of the more famous cultivators in the Central Plains. After the battle at the Nine Mysteries Tower, Yun Tian Laozu had also benefited a lot from entering the Dao Altar world. After a few years of closed-door training, he had quickly pushed his cultivation to the peak of the late Dharma stage. Even the fourth pure yang throne in the history of Flowing Cloud Pavilion was waving at him. Now, the 6 holy lands of the cultivation world were all in trouble. The 2 holy lands near Flowing Cloud Pavilion, Wuxia School and Nine Mysteries Tower, had suffered great losses. Now Yun Tian Laozu was full of ambition. He wanted to raise Flowing Cloud Pavilion's status in the cultivation world once again after advancing to the pure yang stage. He wanted to become an established sect like Tianxian sect and Tianyue sect. Who was the one who spoke so arrogantly just now? Lu Ping turned around slightly with a smile on his face. He looked at the stunned cultivator in front of him and said, "Fellow Yun Tian, how have you been?" Lu Tianping. Ancestor Yun Tian exclaimed in shock. Subconsciously, he was about to put up his guard, but then he realized that he would be making a fool of himself in front of his own disciple if he acted so cowardly. So, he tried his best to suppress the fear in his heart and said solemnly, "What are you doing here? My Flowing Cloud Pavilion has nothing to do with your Zhenling sect." Yun Tian Laozu actually did not care whether his image in front of the sect disciples was ruined because of his panic at the moment he saw Lu Tianping. Because when he shouted the 3 words, Lu Tianping, the Flowing Cloud Pavilion cultivators behind him were already in an uproar. How could they care about the expression on their own Yun Tian Laozu's face? Lu Tianping was the North Sea Water Sword immortal who killed a pure yang fire Luan and fought off a heavenly demon? Several Flowing Cloud Pavilion disciples looked at Lu Ping with fear in their eyes. The direct disciple from Flowing Cloud Pavilion was already drenched in cold sweat. This condensation minor repairs in front of him was actually the North Sea Water Sword immortal who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. He had actually shouted at him and even secretly attacked him, trying to kill him. Thinking of this, the direct disciple felt as if he was walking on the edge of the gates of hell. "You are the North Sea Water Sword immortal, but you hid your cultivation and plotted against us. Is it really that fun?" Lu Ping pointed at Linglong's wine cauldron in the middle of the valley and said, "That's strange. It was your Flowing Cloud Pavilion that came looking for trouble with me. Why is it that from your tone, it seems that I deliberately came looking for trouble?" Lu Ping paused for a moment, then a smile suddenly appeared on his face. He said, "If you say that I deliberately came looking for trouble, it is not without reason. If I remember correctly, fellow Taoist Yun Tian was one of the people who set up a trap in the Dao altar to kill me, right?" Yun Tian Laozu's expression instantly changed. He smiled bitterly and said, "What happened in the Dao altar was also because of the Wuxia school's bewitchment. I didn't think that the person who was ambushed would be you, Lu Daoyu. Moreover, Lu Daoyu didn't suffer any losses that day. On the contrary, it was great cultivator Gu from Wuxia school who had his cultivation crippled by Lu Daoyu." "Oh, so you're saying that if I was the one who suffered losses that day, then I deserved it?" Yun Tian Laozu was stunned and said quietly, "If Lu Daoyu insists on fighting, the old man will accompany you." Lu Ping smiled and didn't say anything. Yun Tian Laozu glanced at the scene in front of him and roughly guessed what had happened. He suddenly turned around and scolded fiercely, "Ignorant things, you can't read and don't know how to touch the signboard. Do you dare to casually offend the North Sea Water Sword immortal?" Lu Ping and Qi Lianing looked at each other secretly. They could see the ridicule in each other's eyes. The other person only said that he had offended them, but he didn't mention anything about stealing the treasure. He spoke highly of Lu Ping, but in fact, Lu Ping was just like the direct disciple of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion who had offended him. They were both third-generation cultivators. The direct disciple hesitated for a moment, then silently stepped forward and said, "I didn't know that Senior Lu was here. I have offended you, please forgive me." This surprised Lu Ping. From Lu Ping's point of view, all the direct disciples cultivated by the sect were arrogant. Expecting them to apologize for him would be worse than killing them. However, this direct disciple of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion was actually willing to put down his pride and apologize. This made Lu Ping take a few more glances at him. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed slightly and he quickly stepped aside. He then smiled and said, "I don't dare. Fellow Taoist Qian, please don't make things difficult for me. We are both third-generation disciples, so you and I can treat each other as equals." Seeing that the matter was over, Yun Tian Laozu felt relieved. He still had a smile on his face and said, "It was my flowing cloud pavilion's fault. Since Lu Daoyu is passing by, why don't you come to my flowing cloud pavilion and stay for a while to make up for the previous offense against Lu Daoyu?" Lu Ping put on a fake smile and refused. "Fellow Taoist Yun, I appreciate your kindness. Everyone please go back. I still have important matters to attend to, so I won't chat with you anymore." Chapter 1428. The cultivators from Flowing Cloud Hall followed Yun Tian Laozu out of the valley. Watching them leave, Qi Lianying said, "And here I was, thinking that you were going to attack. Unexpectedly, you let them go so easily." Lu Ping said in an exasperated tone, "This is Flowing Cloud Hall's territory. If I start a massacre here, even if I have 3 heads and 6 arms, I will not be able to stop the entire Flowing Cloud Hall from making things difficult for me. Not to mention, doing so will easily provoke the Central Plains world of cultivation. When that happens, it will only make things worse. It is best if both sides have some reservations. Flowing Cloud Hall is located in the inner region of the Central Plains. Normally, it would not have any dealings with the overseas world of cultivation. However, it is also not an enemy that we can casually provoke." When Lu Ping turned around, he saw that Ling Long had regained the appearance of a beautiful little girl. However, after overcoming her second lightning tribulation, Ling Long had grown up considerably. She appeared much more mature. Even so, she still appeared to be only 14 or 15 years old. Lu Ping chuckled and asked, "How is it?" Ling Long giggled and waved her hand at Lu Ping. Immediately, the spiritual energy within the valley churned. Lu Ping spread out his divine sense and found that the surrounding spiritual energy was rapidly converging towards the valley with Ling Long as the center. Lu Ping stretched his hand out and the turbulent waves of spiritual energy immediately dissipated. He said, all right. If we cause too much of a ruckus, that Yun Tian Laozu might go back on his word and come back to kill us, what should we do?" Qi Lianying smiled and asked, "Where are we going next? By the way, when will the sword duel between Jianghu Palace and Skyren begin? You are the one who invited both sides. Surely you know the location of the duel, right?" Lu Ping kept the wine cauldron. However, Ling Long continued to play around with Lu Ping and did not return into the wine cauldron. Only then did he say, "Flowing Cloud Hall has already noticed this place. We cannot stay here any longer. Let's leave this place first. As for the location of the duel, it will be at the West River Cultivation region. We are not far from there. However, before that, you should first overcome your first lightning tribulation. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to enter the sword duel grand meeting." Not long after Yun Tian Laozu and the rest left the valley, Chen Changming couldn't help but ask, "Martial uncle, why did Lu Tianping come to our sect at this time?" Yun Tian Laozu snorted and said, "What other reason could there be? It should be because of the rumor that the 6 heirs of Jianghu Palace have joined hands to challenge Xiao Baiyu. Xiao Baiyu is known as the #1 sword cultivator in the cultivation world, while Jianghu Palace is the #1 sword sect in the world. Their duel will naturally cause a stir in the cultivation world. Lu Tianping's sword techniques have shaken the cultivation world. Now that Junling is an ally of Skyrend, he will naturally not miss out on such a grand meeting. As for why he appeared in our sect's territory, maybe he's accompanying his female friend on a sightseeing tour." However, Chen Changming still seemed to be a little worried and said, "That spiritual treasure that just passed the tribulation should be a second tribulation spiritual treasure. Even in our sect, there are only 2 of such treasures. This Lu Tianping is really bold. When a normal spiritual treasure passes the tribulation, it will be under the heavy protection of the sect, for fear that it will be robbed after the tribulation. However, this Lu Tianping randomly found a desolate place and dared to use his spiritual treasure to summon the tribulation lightning. Isn't this obviously inviting people to rob it? Who dares to take it?" Yun Tian Laozu snorted and said, "Do you still think he's a 3rd-generation cultivator like you? If he wasn't absolutely confident in his own strength, why would he randomly choose a place for his treasure to go through the tribulation? Of course, it's because he believes that no one can take the treasure from him. Think about it, if Xiao Baiyu summoned the tribulation lightning for his treasure near our sect, would you dare to take it?" Looking at his disciple, who had his head lowered in silence, Yun Tian sighed, "In this world, there will always be some extremely talented people whose achievements make others despair. The only thing we can do is never lose hope and confidence to catch up to them." Chen Changming suddenly looked up and said seriously, "Martial uncle, I know what to do. Lu Tianping won't be a burden to me, but a motivation to move forward." Yun Tian Laozu nodded in satisfaction. The reason why he liked this disciple wasn't because of Qian Changming's talent. On the contrary, as a famous large sect in Middle-earth, the Flowing Cloud Pavilion's third-generation cultivators had many disciples who were better than Qian Changming in both cultivation and talent. The only thing that Yun Tian Laozu cared about was this disciple's unyielding fighting spirit. No matter what kind of predicament or how strong the opponent was, this disciple could always maintain a strong fighting spirit and an optimistic attitude. In Yun Tian Laozu's opinion, only a person like this could become the future sect leader of the Flowing Cloud Pavilion. Only then could Flowing Cloud Pavilion resist the pressure from the surrounding sects, the Nine Mysteries Tower and the Wuxia School. Yun Tian Laozu suddenly stopped in midair and turned around. Changming, take everyone back. The old man has something to do. He'll be back soon. Qian Changming asked doubtfully, Martial Uncle, are you going back to find Lu Tianping? They shouldn't be in the valley right now. Yun Tian Laozu patted his shoulder and said, don't worry. Your martial uncle isn't stupid enough to find trouble with Lu Tianping at this time. Although Qian Changming was full of doubts, he didn't dare to disobey the order of his most respected sect elder. Seeing that his disciple had left, Yun Tian Laozu turned around and flew towards the northeast. Lu Ping brought Qi Lianing north to the Yulon River. Then he followed the Yulon River to the east and arrived at a foggy swamp. Seeing the surprise on Qi Lianing's face, Lu Ping smiled and said, this is the lush jade swamp. It's the place where the Yulon River and the Yulon River meet. If you follow the Yulon River north, you'll reach the Yulon Mountain courtyard that Jinling secretly opened in the Central Plains. This place used to be a gathering place for ferocious beasts. Few people ever come here. The mist here can weaken the divine sense of a cultivator. When the Mara's calamity broke out in Hebei, the final battle took place here. All the sects had a chaotic battle here. After the battle, the lush jade swamp became even more desolate. Therefore, there's no need to worry about people disturbing you. It's a good place to undergo the tribulation. The only problem is that the spiritual energy here is thin and not helpful for cultivation. Qi Lianing smiled and said, it's not bad. At least, there's no need to worry about people coming after you undergo the tribulation. But speaking of which, you went through so much trouble to find such a dangerous place for me to summon the tribulation. Does that mean you'll have to leave for a while? Lu Ping knew that he could not hide it from her. He smiled bitterly and said, indeed, I can only protect you during the tribulation. After that, you'll have to train on your own for a period of time. Alternatively, I can send you back to the Yulon Mountain courtyard. That place is currently managed by Elder Mei Tianqing's eldest disciple, Sister Tianhui. Upon hearing this, Qi Lianing shook his head and refused, saying, forget it then. I'll just train here in the swamp. Don't worry, no one will cause trouble for a Dharma adept for no reason, especially in such a desolate place. Lu Ping said helplessly, I didn't expect you to have accumulated so much. You almost triggered the tribulation when you just broke through the early Dharma stage. Otherwise, we would have had enough time to return to the East Sea or the North Sea to undergo the tribulation. Furthermore, this matter is rather tricky. I can't delay any longer. After you successfully undergo the tribulation, I'll have to leave immediately. Lu Ping hesitated for a while but still handed her a jade bottle. Qi Lianing looked at the jade bottle in her hand doubtfully. There were many seals and runes engraved on it, and there were a few small spirit sealing talismans pasted on the mouth of the bottle. She knew that the elixir inside was not to be underestimated, so she put it away and asked, what's inside? Lu Ping thought for a while and said, I didn't want to give it to you at first. It's called the Heaven-Stealing Elixir, and it's an elixir that's only used when you're in a life-or-death situation. Consuming it will have very serious consequences, so you can't use it unless you have no other choice. It's only useful during the first tribulation. Although it can save your life, it's not very useful. I'm just a little worried. Qi Lianing saw that Lu Ping was speaking incoherently because of the elixir, and she could not help but find it funny. However, she knew that Lu Ping was concerned about her, and she also knew that the elixir was inauspicious for a Dharma adept, so she could not bring herself to say it. She rolled her eyes at him and said, do you have so little confidence in me? If I can't even survive the first tribulation, then I, Qi Lianing, might as well kill myself. I won't use the elixir, but I won't return it to you either. From Qi Lianing's point of view, although the elixir was inauspicious, it was the true expression of Lu Ping's sincerity, and that was what she truly valued. In fact, Lu Ping was really in a mess because of his concern. Although no one could be certain about the tribulation, and any accidents could happen, the most fundamental thing was still the strength of the cultivator undergoing the tribulation. If the cultivator was really powerful to a certain extent, then there would naturally be no need to fear any accidents during the tribulation. It was just like when Lu Ping summoned the second tribulation. The sword of true spirit forcefully intervened and attempted to undergo the tribulation with Lu Ping, causing the power of the second tribulation to suddenly increase to the intensity of a pure yang tribulation. However, Lu Ping still relied on his strong cultivation foundation and powerful body to endure it, and in the end he obtained great benefits. After Qi Lianying summoned the tribulation, the entire process was daunting but not dangerous, but Lu Ping, who was far away from the tribulation, was still on tenterhooks as he watched. It wasn't until the ninth lightning bolt struck down that Lu Ping dared to enter the abundant jade swamp and look for Qi Lianying, who had just finished his tribulation. Qi Lianying was still in the air, but he didn't have the courage to enter the abundant jade swamp. By this time, Qi Lianying's tribulation had already been completed for more than 2 hours. After absorbing the pure yang aura of the first tribulation, the injuries caused by the tribulation had mostly healed. Lu Ping patrolled the surroundings of the lush jade swamp and only completely relaxed when he found that Qi Lianying's tribulation really did not attract anyone's attention. After that, Lu Ping used the Linglong wine cauldron as a guide to extract a small water vein from the Yulon River into the lush jade swamp, so that Qi Lianying could use it to open up a temporary cave for training. After the Linglong wine cauldron had undergone the second tribulation, its ability to control and gather spirit veins had greatly increased. During the battle at the Nine Profound Tower, Lu Ping had to spend a great deal of effort to divert the attention of the Nine Profound Tower when he wanted to draw a water vein from the Qingming River to his encampment. Now, with the help of the Linglong wine cauldron, he had managed to extract a branch of the Yulon River without attracting the attention of the Wuxing school, the Tianxian sect and the Koi clan, who all viewed the Yulon River as their own. The Linglong wine cauldron would be used to suppress this water vein, and Lu Ping left nearly 100 top-grade spirit stones for Qi Lianying before leaving the lush jade swamp and flying south. The Qingming River flowed from the west to the east, and when it reached the vicinity of the Nine Profound Tower, it turned southeast and flowed into the Southern Sea. Lu Ping also didn't expect the gathering to be held in the Nine Shen Mountain. After all, this was a place he couldn't be more familiar with. But with so many great presences gathered here, did they really think the Nine Shen Pavilion was blind to their presence? When he passed by the valley where the thieving Laozu's cave was located, Lu Ping was slightly surprised. This was the place? Furthermore, judging from the marks left behind, the gathering was within the cave that Laozu had opened up. Lu Ping was shocked. Could they be planning to enter from the Longevity Sky Grotto? However, during the battle at the Nine Profound Tower, Mara's army had broken through the Nine Profound Tower's training grounds, and the cultivators from the various sects had taken the opportunity to plunder. Lu Ping had entered the Longevity Sky Grotto from there, causing the entire place to be a meter high. How could the Nine Profound Tower not have noticed? If they had, why would the Nine Profound Tower continue to keep this hidden danger? Could this place be a trap? Lu Ping was not in a hurry to enter the valley and instead, he flew above the valley. This time, he could clearly see that the huge rock that was the entrance to the Thieving Heaven Grotto had already shattered into pieces. It was clear that the Nine Profound Tower had found the entrance that thieving Laozu had secretly opened up after the Longevity Sky Grotto's calamity, and they followed the clues to completely destroy the Thieving Heaven Grotto. Then how did Xiao Baiyu and the rest find this place? Lu Ping was bewildered, but he still didn't enter the valley. When he flew across the sky above the valley again, an angry voice suddenly blasted in his ears. "I say, kid, you're really bored. You're making old Yuan dizzy by wandering around in the sky. Hurry up and get down here." The surrounding space vibrated as if it had bound Lu Ping in an invisible cage. Following which, the surrounding air currents became chaotic, and in the perception of Lu Ping's divine sense, an invisible hand was already grabbing towards Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping's heart turned cold. Based on this spatial ability and the powerful aura that Lu Ping's divine sense had captured when the irritable voice sounded, the person who made the move was an authentic pure yang cultivator. Furthermore, it was a pure yang cultivator of the demon race. Chapter 1429. However, he was underestimating Lu Ping's capabilities if he thought he could make him surrender with such a method. Lu Ping snorted coldly and the aura around him surged. In an instant, the space cage burst like a balloon that had been injected with enough water. Following that, Lu Ping clenched his fists and the water vapor in the surrounding void condensed into a cloud hand, which instantly collided with the invisible hand that was grabbing at him. There was no sound or movement, but Lu Ping dodged the moment the two hands came into contact. At the same time, Lu Ping's spiritual force accurately sensed that the demon clan's pure yang cultivator had no choice but to leave his hiding place to avoid the violent spatial turbulence caused by the clash of the two spiritual powers. Therefore, the demon clan's pure yang cultivator was completely exposed to Lu Ping's spiritual force. The former general of the great ape clan Yuan Pokong was him. At this moment, the spatial turbulence caused by their battle finally erupted. Lu Ping's divine sense detected that other than Yuan Pokong, there were also several other pure yang cultivators around them. An even larger space cage enveloped the entire area. But this time, Lu Ping didn't panic because the pure yang cultivator space cage was created to eliminate the spatial turbulence caused by the battle between him and Yuan Pokong. But this time, Lu Ping didn't panic because the pure yang cultivator space cage was created to eliminate the spatial turbulence caused by his battle with Yuan Pokong. Don't the two of you know that you're fighting in an appropriate place? Causing such a huge commotion here, do you really think that the 9 mystical tower is blind? Lu Ping's heart relaxed. The person who spoke was Xiao Baiyu. Following that, Qifan Laozu's voice sounded, "Old Yuan, do you have any more questions this time?" Yuan Pokong's voice seemed very surprised and carried a trace of irritation. After that, he muttered in a low voice, "Motherfucker." It was unknown if he was scolding Lu Ping. Everyone revealed themselves in the void. One by one, a surging pure yang aura wreaked havoc in the space cage that everyone had jointly set up. Lu Ping happened to be in the middle of these people. However, in the face of this pressure, he was indeed calm and composed. He looked at these people one by one, calmly meeting their slightly scrutinizing gazes. Xiao Baiyu, Qifan Laozu, Full Moon Laozu, Linyu Laozu, Feng Lu, Yuan Pokong and Yang Shouchang. In addition to these 7 pure yang cultivators whom Lu Ping recognized, there were also 3 human pure yang cultivators whose auras were no weaker than the 7 of them. At this moment, a gloating voice sounded, "Old monkey, you've lost face now. Old Xiao and Qifan have long said that this little guy is not simple, but you insisted on reaching out to test him. Isn't it obvious that you don't trust old Xiao and Qifan? Look, you've lost the face of a pure yang cultivator." Yuan Pokong was instantly enraged. "Yang Shouchang, shut your fucking mouth. I don't know who was the one who wished for the world to be in chaos and fought with our old Yuan to test him. Now you fucking change your tune so fast." Lu Ping's gaze turned and heard the gloating voice once again coming from Yang Shouchang's mouth. "Hi, in any case it was you who made the move. What does it have to do with the old man?" Yuan Pokong cursed. "Yang Shouchang, you are the younger brother of the Peacock King. Where is your dignity? Don't be so shameless, okay?" Yang Shouchang laughed. "My ass dignity only now do you know?" Qifan Laozu frowned and said, "You two stop arguing. Does anyone have any objections to the newcomer coming in? If not, then hurry up and settle the matter. Lu Daoyu has just arrived and should have many questions that need to be answered. If he stays here for too long, the 9 Profound Tower will definitely notice him. Do you really think that the 9 Profound Tower is blind?" Yuan Pokong coldly snorted in dissatisfaction, while Yang Shouchang looked at Lu Ping with a mischievous smile. However, neither of them spoke again. Obviously, among the 10 pure yang cultivators, Qifan Laozu's prestige was not low. Feng Lu looked at Lu Ping with a serious expression. Lu Ping could almost feel a palpable murderous aura from Feng Lu. In his divine sense he could see a hellish scene of slaughter. Lu Ping's expression was solemn, and with a cold snort, his divine sense surged out without reservation. It was like a world-destroying torrent, causing the heaven and earth created by Feng Lu's divine sense to become a doomsday torrent. The hellish scene had no choice but to vanish into thin air before the doomsday. "Ah. Interesting." A few exclamations sounded. Obviously, the divine sense that Lu Ping displayed was far beyond everyone's expectations. Originally, they thought that although Lu Ping's strength was comparable to that of a pure yang cultivator, divine sense cultivation was sometimes related to a tenacious will. Lu Ping's 300 years of cultivation could be considered to have made a name for himself at a young age in front of these old demons who had 1,000 years of cultivation. Without the experience of laying the foundation of time and killing like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, it was unlikely that his divine sense cultivation would be so tenacious. However, when Lu Ping's divine sense erupted in an instant, not only was he not shocked by the hellish scene of corpses and a sea of blood projected by Feng Lu's divine sense, but it turned into a monstrous flood that washed away everything. Lu Ping's instinctive action was a little shocking to the other pure yang cultivators. Feng Lu had a name in the cultivation world, which was called Sage Xueshou. He was a famous butcher in the cultivation world. Under the impact of his overbearing divine sense, other pure yang cultivators had to be careful, and they could only defend their minds and face the enemy passively. However, Lu Ping broke his divine sense illusion in an instant, which meant that Lu Ping's divine sense cultivation was at least not weaker than Feng Lu's. It was no wonder that the pure yang cultivators, who had the mentality of 1,000-years-old demons, could not help but exclaim at this time. At this time Xiao Baiyu suddenly smiled and asked, "What do you think?" A glimmer of light flashed in Feng Lu's eyes, but his face was still cold. He opened his mouth and said, "Not bad. You are very good." The first "not bad" was a reply to Xiao Baiyu, and the second was a reply to Lu Ping. If Yuan Pokong's previous test had made the pure yang cultivators present recognize Lu Ping's qualifications to join their group, then now they had to seriously consider the suggestion made by Xiao Baiyu, who was the leader of the alliance. Although Lu Ping did not understand what Xiao Baiyu was talking about, he knew that it probably had something to do with him. Therefore he hovered in the space jointly maintained by the pure yang cultivators and remained silent. At this time Full Moon Laozu said with a smile, "This matter can't be decided in a short period of time. There are still us old guys around and he is the only newcomer. Let's let him adapt first and talk about it in the future. Besides, I'm afraid Lu Xiaoyu can't even recognize all of us now, and things are still unclear. Do you really believe that Lu Xiaoyu will listen to you just like that?" Xiao Baiyu was stunned. Although he had a deep conversation with Lu Ping previously, and Lu Ping had indeed revealed his ambition for their plan, Lu Ping did not promise him anything and only agreed to join and take a look. Seeing the calm expression on Lu Ping's face, Xiao Baiyu said in a self-deprecating manner, "I was rash. Let me introduce everyone to Lu Xiaoyu first. There's no need to introduce Brother Seven Fans and Senior Full Moon." The way Xiao Baiyu addressed everyone also made Lu Ping feel somewhat helpless. In fact, be it Seven Fans Laozu, Full Moon Laozu, Yuan Pokong, Yang Shouchang, and the others, they were actually considered as first-generation cultivators in the cultivation world. On the other hand, Xiao Baiyu was a genuine second-generation pure yang, but he was of the same generation as Seven Fans Laozu and the others. When it came to Full Moon Laozu, he was a generation lower than Lu Ping, which made Lu Ping quite speechless. Fortunately, this was not a problem for Lu Ping because Lu Ping had to address any one of the 10 pure yang cultivators present as a senior. Among the 10 pure yang cultivators, Lu Ping knew 7 of them. As for the remaining 3, 2 of them were itinerant cultivators like Linyu Laozu. One of them was called Shihua Laozu, and he was an authentic itinerant cultivator. As for Guiyue Laozu, his background was somewhat similar to Linyu Laozu's. They were originally cultivators of a sect, but later on, they fell out with the sect and had no choice but to betray the sect and become an itinerant cultivator. However, his cultivation level soared and he became a pure yang cultivator, causing the sect he was in to become a laughingstock in the cultivation world. As for the third pure yang cultivator, Laozu, he was from a large sect in Middle Earth, the Seven Virtuous Sect. He was called Sanshin Laozu. Lu Ping had been traveling around Middle Earth for a long time, so he had heard of the name of the Seven Virtuous Sect. He heard that the founder of the sect, Laozu, was one of the 7 Dharma adepts. Originally, the sect was called the Seven Virtuous Sect. However, the 7 founders of the sect, Laozu, felt that the name of the sect was too eye-catching. Coincidentally, the 7 of them each mastered a unique skill that had been passed down in the sect for generations, so they changed the name of the sect to the Seven Virtuous Sect. However, when they first heard of the Seven Virtuous Sect, most people said that this sect had no successor. Although it was a large sect, there were no outstanding disciples in the 3rd and 4th generation. It was likely that the sect would go downhill in the future and fall from its position as a large sect. However, they had never heard that the Seven Virtuous Sect actually had a hidden pure yang cultivator, Laozu. After everyone had finished introducing themselves, Sanshin Laozu took the lead and asked, "Friend Xiao, your target this time is the 9 Mystical Tower, right?" Xiao Baiyu nodded and said, "After the battle at the 9 Mystical Tower, the 9 Mystical Tower's strength has been greatly reduced. Now it is the weakest of the 6 Holy Lands. I believe everyone has guessed that this is the reason why we have gathered here." Shihua Laozu said, "The 9 Mystical Tower is indeed the weakest now. The other 5 Holy Lands are all busy with their own affairs, so this is indeed the best time to strike. However, now that the 9 Mystical Tower has closed its doors, all of its power has been concentrated within the 9 mystical tower, making it the strongest. Friend Xiao, do you have any plans to break into the 9 mystical tower? Xiao Baiyu smiled bitterly and said, to be honest, I really don't have any ideas at the moment. Guyu Laozu frowned and said, can't we just force our way in? Yuan Pokong was very dissatisfied and said, old man Guyu, could it be that you're afraid? Yang Shouchang, who was standing at the side, wished for the world to be in chaos and said, that's right, that's right. Could it be that you're afraid? If you're afraid, then hurry up and scram. Chapter 1430. Laozu was very dissatisfied with the two fellows who wished for the world to be in chaos, but he could not do anything about it. However, Lu Ping found it strange as he watched from the side. Among the 10 pure yang cultivators present, only Yuan Pokong and Yang Shouchang were pure yang cultivators of the demon race. It stood to reason that Xiao Baiyu organized this alliance to deal with the 6 holy lands, so it was better to abandon the monster cultivators. After all, it was not a good reputation to collude with the monster race and invite trouble into the house. Even if they succeeded in the future, they would probably be criticized by others in the cultivation world. Besides, even Lu Ping himself could see this point of doubt. How could those pure yang cultivators who were not cunning see through it? However, Xiao Baiyu brought these 2 pure yang monster clan cultivators into the alliance, and the other pure yang monster clan cultivators did not object to this. Even when the 2 of them were making jokes and pestering each other endlessly, they tried their best to give in to them. That was to say, there must be a reason that Lu Ping did not understand. At this time Xiao Baiyu also spoke, alright, the 2 of you. This is not the time to play around. If the 2 of you mess around, you won't be able to see this grand scene. Yuan Pokong immediately said, there's no way out of this, old Yuan. You guys say it, you guys say it. Our old Yuan is just a shoulder. You guys decide how to fight. Old Yuan will be the vanguard. Yang Shouchang made a good start as he said fiercely, damn it. At most, this daddy will steal the 5 elemental spiritual light fan again. If I can make a hole in the 9 mystical towers protective array, Yang Shouchang said fiercely, but no matter how he looked at him, there was a hint of hesitation in his eyes. Clearly this matter would not be easy to accomplish. Xiao Baiyu frowned and said, old Yang, you can't. The last time you helped me fight against the 5 holy lands, your brother was already very dissatisfied. Old Yang also suffered quite a bit because of this. The 5-element spiritual light fan is the symbol of the Peacock Throne. You were able to steal it the first time because Peacock King trusted you and didn't guard against you. If you want to steal it again, not only will you not be able to, you will also be grounded by Peacock King. When that happens, we will lose a great battle force. This is not a risk we can take. Lu Ping could see that Yang Shouchang was obviously relieved, and there was even a hint of fear in his eyes. Clearly, the punishment he received for stealing the 5-element spiritual light fan had caused him, the pure Yang Laozu, to feel some lingering fear. However, Sanshin Laozu said, if not for the 5-element spiritual light fan, I'm afraid the old man's mysterious sky-breaking array with the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman would not be able to break the 9 mystical towers protective array. Don't forget, the protective array of the 6 holy lands is suppressed by treasures of the heavens-splitting divine artifact level. Even if the old man is proficient in formations, it would be useless for him to make a small hole in the 9 mystical towers protective array. This Sanshin Laozu was clearly a great grandmaster who was proficient in formations. With his pure yang cultivation, he could be considered a top-notch formation master in the world of cultivation if he could break the 9 mystical towers protective array. Lu Ping had also heard some legends about Sanshin Laozu from Linyu Laozu. This Sanshin Laozu was obsessed with formations. Although he was also a top-notch pure yang Laozu, he spent many years studying the Tao of formations in the Southern Sea Nether Sea. Over 100 years ago, the formation forest in the Southern Sea of the Underworld Sea was suddenly destroyed by someone. In order to obtain more inheritances related to formations before the formation forest in the Southern Sea of the Underworld Sea collapsed, the 3 stars Laozu spent close to 100 years to leave these formations in the Underworld Sea, trying to preserve these inheritances. It was also because he was so deeply immersed in the study of formations that this Laozu basically stopped caring about the matters of the 7 manifestation sect after he advanced to the pure yang level. This also caused this large sect with a long history to have a pure yang overseeing it, but the power of the sect declined year by year. This time, it was unknown how Xiao Baiyu and the rest managed to invite this Laozu. However, this White Feather Alliance was originally a heaven-defying operation. From this, it could be seen that this Sanshin Laozu was not without ambition. Hearing Sanshin Laozu's words, Qi Laozu had a worried expression. He said, "Didn't Sanshin say that this abandoned thieving heaven cave dwelling once had a spatial passage leading to the 9 mystical tower? Although it has been blocked by the 9 mystical tower, it has been opened before. What if we start from there again?" Sanshin Laozu shook his head. "Absolutely not. Since the 9 mystical tower has suffered a loss here, how can they leave any loopholes? Even if there are loopholes, it is most likely a trap. This is also the reason why the old man is unwilling to set up another formation." Linyu Laozu spoke at this time. "What if we use more rainbow restriction-breaking talismans?" Sanshin was startled and said, "That's a method that isn't really a method. The 9 profound pavilions heaven creation artifact, the 7-feathered fan, was left behind by Taoist Luan. If we want to start with the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman, then we'll need a huge amount." "How many?" Sanshin Laozu pondered for a moment. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "At least 49. 49? Linyu Laozu laughed bitterly. "This is really not a small number." Xiao Baiyu pondered for a moment and said, "Guys, don't hide it. Tell me what you have. I can take out 4 pieces of paper." Qifan Laozu said, "The old man has 5. Full Moon Laozu also said, "I also have 4. The 10 pure yang experts were naturally rich, but the 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans were not easy to obtain. The 10 of them had only managed to gather 28 talismans, which was far from the 49 talismans that 3 Qin Patriarch had requested. Yuan Pokong did not even have a single talisman on him, and it was already good enough for itinerant cultivators like Patriarch Linyu and Patriarch Shihua to have one. Even Patriarch Guiyue only had 2, and 3 Qin Patriarch had 6 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans, which was the most among the 10 of them. Is there any other way? The complete inheritance of the rainbow restriction-breaking talismans is in the hands of the 6 sacred lands. The talisman masters of the various sects in the cultivation world might be able to make 1 or 2 by chance, but it is also due to luck. Moreover, most of them are treasures. Even if we collect them with all our strength, I am afraid we will not be able to gather 49 in such a short time." At that moment, Lu Ping suddenly said, "I also have 5 rainbow restriction-breaking talismans." The 10 pure yang masters suddenly fell silent. Then 20 pairs of eyes stared at Lu Ping. Some were surprised, some were puzzled, some were excited, and some were suddenly enlightened. Xiao Baiyu said with some shame, "I forgot that there is still Lu Xiaoyu." Although Xiao Baiyu had brought Lu Ping here and Lu Ping also had strength that they recognized, they subconsciously did not treat Lu Ping as one of them. Or rather, they did not expect that Lu Ping would have a rainbow restriction-breaking talisman, which was something that could only be encountered by chance in the cultivation world, and he even took out 5 of them at once. In fact, Lu Ping also had this intention. Since he was already on the same boat, he naturally had to do something. Otherwise, even if he had strength, he would not be recognized by everyone. At most, he would be recognized as a fighter. Everyone's plan was big and the harvest was naturally big. Since Lu Ping was involved, he naturally had to get a share of the pie. Moreover, he could not be lacking. Otherwise, what was the point of being a fighter who only listened to orders? At that moment, Sanshin Laozu pondered and said, "There has always been a rumor in the cultivation world that the Ying Tian sect of the Hebei cultivation world had once obtained the complete inheritance of the rainbow restriction-breaking talisman. Later on, the Ying Tian sect was destroyed. 200 years ago, there was another rumor in the cultivation world that the Ying Tian dojo had appeared. However, it was said that the North Seas cultivation world had obtained the inheritance of the rainbow restriction-breaking talisman. Did Lu Xiaoyu's sect obtain the inheritance of the rainbow restriction-breaking talisman?" Lu Ping was shocked, but he put on a smile and said, "How is that possible? The North Seas cultivation world did find the Ying Tian dojo, but our sect did not obtain the inheritance of the rainbow restriction-breaking talisman. However, it is true that the restriction-breaking talisman in my hands came from the Ying Tian dojo." Lu Ping did not care whether these people believed him or not. In any case, he would not admit to it. Even though Lu Ping was not afraid of bearing the consequences of this matter with his current status, there would always be room for negotiation if he did not admit to it. If he did, there would always be some trouble. After Sanshin Laozu asked, he did not pursue the matter any further. Everyone began to discuss other countermeasures. Although Lu Ping's 5 restriction-breaking talismans had surprised everyone, the problem was not completely solved. There were only 16 restriction-breaking talismans. Even though Junling had mastered the complete inheritance, it was still beyond his ability to take out so many rainbow restriction-breaking talismans in one go. Moreover, it was extremely difficult to make a rainbow restriction-breaking talisman, and it required a large amount of cultivation resources as a foundation. Why would Lu Ping want to be a fool for no reason? Break the spirit vein. Sage Shueisho did not say anything, but once he did, it was a drastic measure. Xiao Baiyu slapped his forehead and said, "I'm only thinking about how to break the formation. The foundation of the formation's operation is still the spirit vein. If we can weaken the spirit vein, the formation will naturally not operate smoothly, and its defensive power will decrease. Naturally, it will be much easier to break it. Do you have any ideas, Brother Guyu?" Guyu Laozu was a master among the ore-seeking masters, but he was more proficient in controlling and guiding spirit veins. It was clear that Xiao Baiyu had put in a lot of effort to gather all these people together. "It's difficult," Guyu Laozu continued. "It's not that the old man has not considered this possibility, but the 9 Profound Tower also has ore-seeking masters and formation masters. Perhaps the old man has a way to influence the 9 Profound Tower's spirit vein, but he can only influence it. He cannot cut off the spirit vein's supply. As for the Qingming River's water vein, it is very important, and it is not easy to control it. Moreover, it is extremely easy for the 9 Profound Tower to detect it. Even if the 9 Profound Tower and the Skyward Pavilion controlled most of the Qingming River's water vein, the 9 Profound Tower could not completely rely on the Qingming River's water vein. There must be a huge spirit vein in the Sex Dojo. Even if they controlled the water vein, they might not be able to affect the formation's operation. However, if they ignored it, it seemed that it would be even more difficult to break through the formation. Guyu Laozu finally sighed and said, "Unless we have a divine item like the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth that can suppress the 9 Profound Tower's spirit vein, otherwise," everyone sighed inwardly. If they had the chance to obtain the Cauldron of Heaven and Earth, they would not be here to plot against the 9 Profound Tower. Instead, they would be attacking the 5-element mountain. At this time, Qifan Laozu saw that Lu Ping had stopped participating in the discussion after providing the 5 7-colored restriction-breaking talismans. He just sat quietly and listened, so he casually asked, "Lu Xiaoyu, do you have any ideas?" Everyone fell silent once more as they turned to look at the young cultivator who had given them a pleasant surprise earlier. Lu Ping did not expect Qifan Laozu to take the initiative to ask him. He was startled at first, but then he said in a low voice, "I might be able to try to stop the Qingming River's water vein, but don't get your hopes up. Even if I'm lucky, I'm afraid it won't last long." This time, the other Pure Yang masters had a whole new level of respect for Lu Ping. After all, the entire Qingming River's water vein was even more majestic than a giant spirit vein. Back then, even the 5-element sect only dared to sneakily take a small portion of it. But in the end, it still caused a huge uproar in the cultivation world. In the end, the 5-element sect suffered heavy losses and was disgraced. Although the Pure Yang cultivators were all top almighties in the cultivation world, they were not confident that they could go against the entire Qingming River's water vein with their own strength. However, Lu Ping said that he could temporarily affect the water vein. This naturally made everyone look at him in a higher light. As for whether or not Lu Ping could do it, no one doubted it. At their level, their control over their bodies had reached the pinnacle. Everyone knew very well what they could and couldn't do. Furthermore, if they didn't have the confidence to stop the Qingming River's water vein, they would only face death in the face of the mighty heavenly might. No one would joke around with their lives, so naturally no one doubted Lu Ping's ability. In fact, Xiao Baiyu and the others had been plotting against the 9 Mystical Tower for a long time. The process was naturally a huge and thorough plan. Everyone had actually been preparing for many years and had prepared most of the details. Now, the only things that were still being planned were the key points that needed to be carefully considered. These were matters that concerned everyone's lives, so they had to be careful. However, even Xiao Baiyu himself did not expect that after bringing Lu Ping here, they would immediately make progress on the 2 key points that everyone had been discussing for a long time. Chapter 1431. In fact, Lu Ping had no other choice. Although he had gained everyone's approval, Lu Ping could feel the alienation from them during the discussion. This was not because they had intended to do so, but because the Pure Yang masters had been planning for decades or even longer for the 9 Mystical Tower. They had put in a lot of effort, and now that Lu Ping had suddenly joined them, they would have to share in the final harvest. Although they did not say much out of respect for Xiao Baiyu and the others, they still felt a little uncomfortable and subconsciously excluded Lu Ping during the discussion. Lu Ping also knew that if he did not show some of his abilities and pay a price, it would be difficult for them to truly acknowledge him. Although the rainbow restriction breaking talisman was important, it was not the foundation of this battle. Lu Ping believed that if the pure young masters really focused on collecting, with their thousands of years of connections in the cultivation world, obtaining 49 rainbow restriction breaking talismans was just a matter of time. At most they could delay the start of the plan by 8 to 10 years. They had already waited for decades, so why would they be short of time? However, intercepting the Qingming River's water vein was a different story. This was a matter of true ability, and it was one of the key factors that would determine the success or failure of this plan. Lu Ping taking the initiative to do this was already enough to elevate his status to the same level as the other pure young masters. In fact, it was still about strength. If one dared to do something that others could not do, he would naturally be looked up to. Sanchen Laozu also said, if Lu Xiaoyu can really influence the Qingming River's water vein and affect the operation of the 9 mystical towers protective array, and if Guyu uses other secret techniques to affect the supply of the 9 mystical towers spirit vein, the old man might be able to reduce the scale of the mysterious sky-splitting array and set it up with only 36 rainbow restriction-breaking talismans. However, when that time comes, we might have to rely on Xiao Daoist's one sword to break all things and Daoist Yuan's heaven's equal holy staff. When Yuan Pokong heard this, he immediately patted his chest and said, "Don't worry, our old Yuan might not have a fight, but I'm not afraid of a big one." Sanchen Laozu then turned to Yang Shouchang. "Fellow Daoist Yang, the old man also needs your help." Yang Shouchang rolled his eyes and said, "What?" Sanchen Laozu had long been accustomed to these two monster race pure young masters' slow-witted tempers and still patiently said, "Although fellow Daoist Yang does not cultivate spirit arrays, the secret divine ability of the Peacock royalty is extremely useful in breaking spirit arrays." Although fellow Daoist Qi Shan's 7 spirit fans are different from the 5-element spirit light fan, the Peng and Luan bloodlines have many similarities, so I would like to ask fellow Daoist Yang and fellow Daoist Qi Shan to help me activate the profound heaven-splitting grand array. Qi Fan Laozu nodded and said, "Of course." Everyone stared at Yang Shouchang, and this Peacock King's junior brother was instantly scared and said, "What are you all looking at me for? I didn't say I wouldn't agree." Sanchen Laozu smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Yang is very righteous." Yang Shouchang snorted and cursed in a low voice, "Righteous my ass." At this time Gu Ming Laozu also said, "The old man also needs fellow Daoist Lin's help here. Fellow Daoist Lin's divine ability of music may be able to help the old man influence the 9 profound towers spirit vein. Although this is extremely difficult and requires a lot of luck, if it really succeeds, it may be easier for fellow Daoist Sanchen and the others to cooperate with Lu Xiaoyu in the Qingming River. That would be for the best." Sanchen Laozu sighed and said, "It's a pity that the old man has wasted decades in the dark space sea and still hasn't found the dark space crystal left behind by the dark space sect. Otherwise, the old man would have a higher chance of breaking through the 9 profound towers array." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, but his face was still expressionless. His gaze was slightly lowered as if he was thinking about something. Everyone's task seemed to have been assigned, but there was still Full Moon Laozu, Shihua Laozu, and Feng Lu who had nothing to do. Feng Lu said, "If that's the case, I will be the first to enter." Shihua Laozu also smiled and said, "Then the old man will be the second." However, Xiao Baiyu shook his head and said, "Fellow Daoist Shihua, you don't have to be so anxious. The real difficulty lies in the 9 profound towers spirit space dimension. At that time, fellow Daoist Shihua and senior full moon space magic will shine. Before that, brother Feng, brother Qi Shan, and brother Yuan will be the first to kill their way in." Shihua Laozu knew that there was a big gap between his strength and the 4 of them. However, Xiao Baiyu's reason was reasonable. The space secret technique that he had mastered was indeed of great help to everyone's plan this time. It was related to everyone's success or failure at the last moment, so they could not afford to make any mistakes. Therefore they readily agreed to Xiao Baiyu's excuse. Yang Shouchang was immediately displeased and said, "What about me? What about me?" Qi Shan Laozu glanced at him and said, "Are you sure you want to face the 7-feather fan that might appear?" Yang Shouchang opened his mouth and immediately became listless. When Yuan Pokong saw this, he instantly started to laugh in a heartless manner. After that, everyone discussed some other matters and emergency measures. Although Lu Ping also participated, he did not do much. He only filled in the gaps. Although these things were not difficult, they were extremely complicated. It could be seen that these people had thought carefully and planned carefully. In this regard, Lu Ping clearly felt the gap between him and these old and experienced people. Everyone gathered for another 3 days. Basically, they had thought through the plan this time. Lu Ping also completely imprinted the entire plan in his mind. After everything was planned, Yang Shouchang suddenly asked about the sword duel between Xiao Baiyu and Purple Sun Palace. He said, "Is there really a need for this sword duel? No matter how I look at it, it doesn't look like a sword duel. It looks more like a battle of qi. Is this Purple Sun Palace plotting something? Old Xiao, what do you think?" Xiao Baiyu smiled without a care and said, "So what if it is qi? Anyway, it is just playing with a few juniors. Purple Sun Palace hates me to the bone. I, Skyrend, also have a blood feud with Purple Sun Palace." Qi Laozu glanced at Lu Ping and said, "Back then Lu Taiqing was also playing with you." Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "I am not stupid enough to not fight back. If those juniors really want to fight with their lives, I don't mind killing a few of them and making Purple Sun Palace feel heartache." Full Moon Laozu also said, "Don't be careless. The 6 direct disciples that Purple Sun Palace nurtured are not to be underestimated. Moreover, I feel that Purple Sun Palace must have arranged some backup plan for these 6 direct disciples. You have to be careful, don't fail miserably." Sanchen Laozu seemed to have thought of something and said, "Could it be the heaven-splitting sword left behind by the Purple Sun Palace's founding master, Jiao Daoren?" Xiao Baiyu thought for a moment and nodded, "That is possible. Purple Sun Palace has been passed down until now. Although there have been rumors that Purple Sun Palace has kept the heaven-splitting sword, Purple Sun Palace has produced many outstanding people. No one or force has ever been able to force them to reveal the heaven-splitting sword. Among the 6 holy lands of cultivation, only Purple Sun Palace and Crystal Palace can do this. From this point of view, it is reasonable that the 6 holy lands have these 2 palaces as their leaders." Yuan Pokong said loudly, "Old Xiao, in that case, you have done something that no one has done before." Xiao Baiyu opened his palm and a 3-inch small sword hovered above his palm. He said, "So what if it is the heaven-splitting sword? In this world, Purple Sun Palace is not the only one with the heaven-splitting sword. My heaven-splitting sword might not lose to them." Feng Lu stared at the small sword in Xiao Baiyu's hand and said, "A pure young spiritual treasure has already passed the 3rd lightning tribulation?" Xiao Baiyu smiled and said, "Every time I think about that Lu Taiqing, this Xiao secretly sighs." Nowadays, the 3rd generation of cultivators in the cultivation world is like a swarm of bees. They are even more outstanding than us back then. It is impossible for this Xiao to not feel any pressure. Take Lu Xiaoyu for example. This Xiao is also putting in a lot of effort to pull him into the same camp. Back then this Xiao only killed that Lu Taiqing by trickery. Now Lu Xiaoyu has directly repelled the heavenly demon. If Lu Xiaoyu also steps into the pure yang realm in the future, even this Xiao will have to admit defeat. Full Moon Laozu smiled and said, "You have such a mindset of being prepared for danger in times of peace. I believe there is no need for us to say anything more." Lu Ping laughed dryly and said, "Senior Xiao is too kind. This junior was able to repel a pure yang spiritual treasure by trickery." "Is that so?" Xiao Baiyu looked at him with a smile that was not a smile and said, "Then what about the Fire Phoenix clan's Yan Jiuxiao?" Lu Ping shrugged and said, "This junior has never said that Yan Jiuxiao died at this disciple's hands." The crowd laughed softly. Lu Ping had actually indirectly admitted that Yan Jiuxiao had indeed been killed by him. However, there was a trace of strangeness in the crowd's laughter. And this strange feeling was obviously a kind of complicated emotion. Could be praise, admiration, fear or jealousy. All kinds of emotions were mixed together. At this time, Feng Lu suddenly opened his mouth and asked, "I heard that you have a life and death friendship with one of the 6 swords of Purple Sun Palace?" Lu Ping did not deny this point. Yes, Purple Sun Palace's Xie Tianyang and this one can be said to be brothers of the opposite sex. Other than that, the 3rd of the 6 swords, Sujin, also has a deep friendship with this one. "Wow!" Yuan Pokong immediately cried out strangely, "This is interesting. I heard that you were invited by 2 sects at the same time. Even old monsters like us in the cultivation world can't get such an honor. Brat, you're going to be in trouble when the time comes." At this time Yang Shouchang also laughed evilly, "That's right. Say, if old Xiao can't hold back his sword when the time comes and Sujin or Xie Tianyang is about to die, will you help? Will you help?" Lu Ping stared at Yang Shouchang and suddenly laughed happily. If Senior Xiao is trapped by the 6 swords of Purple Sun Palace and is on the verge of death, this one might also help. Yuan Pokong and Yang Shouchang's strange laughter came to an abrupt stop. Yuan Pokong looked at Lu Ping, then looked at Xiao Baiyu strangely, then asked Lu Ping seriously, "Will old Xiao lose?" Yang Shouchang also said, "Will he?" Lu Ping sat upright and still, completely ignoring the two. Xiao Baiyu laughed, while Feng Lu looked at Lu Ping seriously and said, "You're very good." Seven Fan Laozu said at this time, "All right, everyone can disperse. Go back and make your own preparations." After the West River Sword Duel, it will be the time when Nine Mystical Tower will be in danger. 3 days later, everyone left Nine Mystical Mountain one after another to make their final preparations. In the abandoned Thieving Heaven Cave residence, only Xiao Baiyu, Seven Fan Laozu, Full Moon Laozu and Lu Ping were left. Full Moon Laozu smiled and said, "You have a lot of questions in your heart, you can ask them now." Lu Ping nodded and said solemnly, "Why is there no one from Yuan clan participating this time?" The three Laozu were stunned. After a long time, Seven Fan Laozu smiled bitterly and said, "I didn't expect you to ask such a question. How did you know we were planning to cooperate with Yuan clan?" Chapter 1432. Seven Fans Laozu looked at Lu Ping in surprise and said, "How did you know that we once tried to cooperate with the Yuan clan?" Lu Ping was silent. Xiao Baiyu also said solemnly, "It seems that you know much more than we imagined." Lu Ping was still silent. The three pure young experts exchanged glances with each other. Finally it was Full Moon Laozu who said, "We don't trust the Yuan clan." Lu Ping finally asked, "Why?" Xiao Baiyu's expression carried a hint of playfulness and said, "They are too great. Great people shouldn't be so prosperous. Moreover, they are just a clan. They can't be like the 6 holy lands that can recruit all kinds of talents from all over the world. How can they have the same inheritance as the 6 holy lands just by relying on the bloodline inheritance of the clan alone? Just because of this?" Lu Ping said with some dissatisfaction. "Doesn't this show that they are righteous and are respected by the cultivation world? The Yuan clan is the direct descendant of Ping Daoren. It is not too surprising that the clan has some rare treasures that can be passed down to the beginning of the world to maintain the clan's inheritance." At this moment, the Seven Fan Grand Master said in an extremely serious manner, "A family that has justice in their heart and is willing to sacrifice themselves to fight against the Demon Luo disaster should not be able to last forever. The Demon Luo disaster that happens once in 1,000 years, not only did it not destroy the Yuan family, who has been fighting so hard without caring about their own safety, but it has always been able to maintain an unusual stability and prosperity. Isn't it strange?" Xiao Baiyu also said, "We don't fear to use the worst thoughts to figure out the Yuan clan. We won't doubt a person sacrificing himself for a noble goal, but if a clan can do this, we can't help but wonder if there are other purposes. Moreover, this clan has been sacrificing themselves for the cultivation world for tens of thousands of years since the beginning of the world. If you say that they have any ulterior motives, I am the first to agree. The Yuan clan may have the support of a great power that we don't know, but we don't want to cooperate with a kind of unknown power." Lu Ping was a little surprised and said, "So you are just guessing from the beginning to the end, just relying on intuition?" "Intuition is enough." Xiao Baiyu said seriously, "What we have planned can cause the sect to fall into a disaster. If there is even the slightest doubt, we would rather give up this strong support." Seven Fans Laozu said in a deep voice, "Actually, it is not all intuition." Lu Ping became spirited and said, "Why do you say so?" Seven Fans Laozu pondered for a moment as if he was searching for some old memories and said, "The old man is a little older, and I have seen the calamity of Mara twice. When the first calamity of Mara happened, the old man was only a 4th-generation disciple of our sect, a minor repairs in the blood condensation realm. At that time I remember the old man's grandmaster sighed and said, 'The Yuan clan is really timely. Whenever there is a calamity of Mara, they will always rush to the scene at the first moment.' At that time the old man was young and ignorant, but he was also very passionate about the Yuan clan's righteousness. However, after 1,000 years the old man has seen and thought too much. This Yuan clan always seems to be able to rush to the scene of the calamity of Mara as soon as the calamity of Mara breaks out, and the number of people who rush to the scene is definitely not many. Although they always have outstanding achievements against the calamity of Mara, in reality, these people alone are not enough to change the situation of the calamity of Mara. The real resistance against the main force of the Mara army is still the alliance of the various sects in the area where the calamity of Mara breaks out. At this time, Full Moon Laozu seemed to have been inspired by Qi Laozu and thought of something. He said, "Now that Daoist Qi Fan has said it, this old man has also thought of something. After the calamity of Mara broke out, this old man always spread the clan's disciples all over the world. It seems that every place where the calamity of Mara breaks out will be resisted by the disciples of the Yuan clan. In reality, with the identity of the number one clan in the world, they can completely gather the clan's disciples to form a joint force and eliminate the calamity of Mara that breaks out in a certain place. But why would they disperse the clan's strength and spread the disciples all over the cultivation world? Moreover, the Yuan clan and the Six Holy Lands are both forces that have inherited the inheritance since the beginning of the world. If there is no tacit understanding between the Yuan clan and the Six Holy Lands that is not known to others, then it is basically unreasonable," Xiao Baiyu added in the end. After Full Moon Laozu finished speaking, the four of them all fell silent. They did not know how big of a storm their discussion today would cause in the cultivation world if it was leaked out. But originally, they only had the mentality of keeping a respectful distance from the Yuan clan. But after this exchange, there was even more fear towards the Yuan clan in their hearts, and they were even more determined to stay away from the Yuan clan. After a long time, Lu Ping finally said, "I have also been advised by an elder to be careful of the people of the Yuan clan. He said that the Yuan clan might have a special connection with the disaster of Mara, but I just don't know if this connection is good or bad." Lu Ping did not say the identity of this elder, but the three Laozu present knew that this mysterious elder would not be the other two great cultivators of Jinling. In fact, whether it was Jiang Tianlin or Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, the three of them clearly did not care about them. In that case, the elder that Lu Ping mentioned was most likely someone who was at least on the same level as them since he could detect such a secret. This kid really hid himself deeply. There was actually such a mysterious elder behind him. The three Laozu naturally would not ask who the elder that Lu Ping mentioned was, but in their hearts, their opinion of Lu Ping and Jinling had inexplicably improved by a level. After asking about the Yuan clan, Lu Ping asked again, "In addition to this matter, there is also the matter regarding the two elders of the demon race, Yuan Pokong and Yang Shouchang. Of course, this junior is not prejudiced against them, but if the demon race cultivators are involved in such a matter, I'm afraid that it will have an extremely bad impact on the cultivation world." Xiao Baiyu seemed to have already expected this question from Lu Ping. He smiled and said, "You are actually afraid that the two of them will involve the demon race forces behind them, right? Regardless of whether it was the Peacock Royalty or the great spiritual ape clan of the Northern Ice Plains, they were both enormous tribes within the demon race, existences equivalent to the 6 sacred grounds. The two of them had special statuses in these two great demon race tribes. Now that they had participated in such an important matter, Lu Ping did not believe that the two of them would not inform their respective demon race tribes of this news. "You don't have to worry about this. This Xiao can guarantee that they will not leak this matter to their respective tribes. As for the matter of their involvement being discovered, the 9 mystical tower has already fallen. As long as we deny all of this, do you think that anyone in the cultivation world will still hold on to this matter? Moreover, we currently cannot do without these two great forces." Lu Ping looked towards Seven Fan Laozu and Full Moon Laozu. Seeing that the two of them did not object to the matter of the two pure Yang demon race experts participating in this matter, he did not speak any further. Instead, he changed the topic and asked, "I believe that the three of you have witnessed the power of the 7-feather fan during the battle at the 9 mystical tower. How can we withstand such divine might?" Upon hearing this, Xiao Baiyu immediately smiled and said, "I had originally thought that Lu Xiaoyu would be the first to ask this question. I never expected that you would wait until now. Let the old man answer this question." Seven Fan Laozu cleared his throat and said, "I believe that little friend should already know that the reason why the 6 sacred grounds are called sacred grounds and have a long history is because they not only possess pure Yang spirit treasures that are akin to divine weapons of creation, but also have supreme experts that have reached the true spirit realm." Lu Ping's expression was solemn, but he still nodded when he heard this. The apocalyptic scene outside the 9 mystical tower that day still left a lingering fear in Lu Ping's heart even now. But has little friend ever thought that there are many sects in the cultivation world that have produced outstanding people who have reached the true spirit realm in one fell swoop? Why are these sects not as prosperous as the 6 sacred grounds? This was also Lu Ping's doubt. In fact, he had many guesses before. Hearing Seven Fan Laozu's question, he tried to say, "Our sect once had a Grand Ginseng Laozu. At that time, this Laozu also had the ambition to establish the sect's foundation in one fell swoop. Unexpectedly, after advancing to the true spirit realm for just over a year, he mysteriously disappeared. Because of this, our sect also suffered a disastrous decline. Because of this, it has taken 6,000 years for us to have today." Grand Ginseng Laozu, the old man has also heard of this genius of the North Sea from our sect's seniors. Seven Fan Laozu said with a trace of reminiscence. However, your sect's Grand Ginseng Laozu did not disappear, but went to the northern ice plains. There is also a passage to leave this world, and every cultivator who has reached the true spirit realm will be rejected by this world, so they cannot stay for too long. Otherwise they will be punished by the heavens, so they have no choice but to leave. Not only this Grand Ginseng Laozu in the history of the Heavenly Profound Sect, True Spirit Laozu, Heavenly Moon Sect, and Skyrend also had True Spirit Laozu. However, without exception, they all had the same experience as your sect's Grand Ginseng Laozu. Just after advancing to the true spirit realm, they cannot stay in this world. After consuming a large amount of cultivation resources from the sect, they turned around and left, causing the sect's foundation to be greatly depleted. In the future, they had no choice but to face the misfortune of a decline in strength. At this time, Lu Ping had more or less guessed Seven Fan Laozu's meaning and said, "Senior, you mean to say that the reason why the six great sects have flourished for so long is because their true spirit Laozu can stay in the sect for a long time? What is the reason for this?" "Because of the Minor Thousand World." "Minor Thousand World?" Lu Ping said in surprise. "A Minor Thousand World like the Tao Altar World? The six great sects all have Minor Thousand Worlds?" Patriarch Seven Fans nodded and said, "That's right. It is because of the existence of the spirit dimension that the patriarchs of the six major sects, who have achieved the true spirit realm, are able to stay in the spirit dimension and avoid the rejection of the world. It is also because of the true spirit patriarchs that the six sacred grounds are able to enjoy such a long and prosperous status in the world of cultivation. Chapter 1433. The reason why the six great holy lands were able to maintain a transcendent position in the cultivation world was because the six great holy lands had their own small thousand worlds, which allowed the true spirit cultivators that appeared in the six great holy lands to avoid the rejection of this world. With a true spirit cultivator in charge, the sects in the cultivation world that had the qualifications to challenge the six great sacred lands could only obediently play their part. Of course, it's also because the six sacred lands have true spirit Laozu holding down the fort that the heaven-opening artifact passed down in their sects can display their greatest power in the hands of the true spirit Laozu. Even I, Xiao, can only flee when faced with such power. Xiao Baiyu added, however, without the heaven-opening artifact in the hands of true spirit Laozu, even if there are pure yang cultivators who can barely display 30% to 50% of its power, it's not impossible to deal with it. Lu Ping naturally had no doubts about Xiao Baiyu's confidence. At the foot of Luo Xan Mountain, Earth's spiritual son from Wuxia School had forcefully used the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth, but in the end he was still unable to do anything to Xiao Baiyu and the others. Instead he had lost two pure yang cultivators. Lu Ping's eyes lit up when he thought of this. "Senior Xiao, are you saying that the Nine Mystical Tower is now without true spirit Laozu?" Full Moon Laozu also smiled. "Otherwise, do you think that the Nine Mystical Tower would have no choice but to seal off their sects just because they lost a few pure yang cultivators?" "But why?" "That's because even though they are holy lands, the number of true spirit cultivators in these holy lands has never stopped. Clearly they have very important inherited secret techniques. However, even so they can only barely maintain one true spirit, Laozu, in their sect. The Nine Profound Towers' true spirit, Laozu, is no longer around, but the Nine Profound Towers' new true spirit, Laozu, has yet to appear. Thus, they can only choose to seal their sect for 100 years. When the new true spirit, Laozu, appears, the Nine Profound Tower will open its doors and remain one of the six great holy lands." Lu Ping continued to ask, "In that case, how can you all be sure that the Nine Profound Towers' true spirit, Laozu, is no longer around? Furthermore, there is only one true spirit, Laozu, in the Nine Profound Tower. Could it be that the Nine Profound Tower chose to seal off their base?" The three Laozu exchanged glances with each other as if they were discussing something. In the end, it was Full Moon Laozu who nodded slightly and said, "Do you know the origins of the Profound Sky Sect, the Heavenly Moon Sect, and the Sky-Splitting Sect?" Lu Ping did not know why the three of them suddenly talked about the inheritance of sects, but he still said after some deliberation, I have only heard of some legends. It seems that the seven Fan Laozu's Profound Sky sect is closely related to the Wuxia school. Senior Zhao's Skyrend also seems to have the same origin as the Purple Sun Palace. As for the Heavenly Moon sect, I do not know. Full Moon Laozu nodded and said, these are indeed legends that have existed in the cultivation world for a long time. In fact, they are not wrong. The roots of our three sects are actually deeply related to the six great holy lands. In fact, many sects in the cultivation world are the same. Their founder, Laozu, may be the six great holy lands, in order to consolidate their own sphere of influence. They once sent their direct disciples to establish some subsidiary sects to assist the six great holy lands in controlling some newly opened areas. However, people's hearts change. No one is willing to always be under others. Over time, these subsidiary sects and the six great holy lands grew apart. After that, they began to break away from the control of the six great holy lands and became new independent inherited sects, such as the Profound Sky sect, the Heavenly Moon sect, the Flowing Cloud Pavilion, Skyrend, and so on. In addition, there are some small and medium-sized sects that are always under the control of the six great holy lands. However, there are also some sects that have always been under the control of the six great holy lands, such as the Wind and Thunder Island of the East Sea, the Purple Talisman Pavilion's Magic Cloud City under the Lingyun Pavilion, the West Desert Palace outside of the Purple Sun Palace, the Taishan sect supported by the Wuxia school, and so on. Full Moon Laozu seemed to be reminiscing about the past. His gaze was slightly blurred. The other two also seemed to be reminiscing about the things that had been passed down in their sects, about the resistance that the seniors of their sects had made in order to break away from the control of the six great holy lands. That must have been won by paying a huge price. And among these sects, Taishan, Tianyue, and Skyrend are different. When Lu Ping heard this, his expression became serious. Obviously, Full Moon Laozu was going to tell him some secrets. The creator of our three sects, Laozu, was a pure yang practitioner. Rather than saying that they broke away from Wuxia School, Xiang Palace, and Jiushuan Tower, it would be better to say that the founders of these sects, Laozu, led a portion of the Holy Lands cultivators who were loyal to them to rebel against the six great Holy Lands. When Lu Ping heard this, he was shocked and blurted out, why? It was for a chance to advance to the true spirit. Seven Fan Laozu sneered and said, advancing to the true spirit requires a huge amount of cultivation resources. In order to ensure that the inheritance of the true spirit will never be broken, even the Holy Lands will only choose one pure yang practitioner from each sect to combine the inherited secret skills to advance to the true spirit. This person will then become the guardian of the Holy Lands. However, there is only one person who can advance to the true spirit, and there are at least 4 or 5 pure yang practitioners in the Holy Lands. Like Xiang Palace or the Crystal Palace, there may be 1 or 2 more. In this way, there is a problem. Every pure yang practitioner wants to fight for this only chance to advance to the true spirit. In order to fight for this opportunity, every pure yang practitioner will scheme against each other and form cliques. Although the final decision is in the hands of the previous generation's Laozu, this does not prevent them from fighting in private. At this time, if the true spirit senior is confused, or if there is a descendant among the pure yang juniors, then it is inevitable that things will be unfair. Once things are unfair, these pure yang practitioners will inevitably feel resentful, and if they are deliberately suppressed, it will naturally add fuel to the fire, and the only way left for them is to rebel against the sect. When a cultivator attains the pure yang realm, he will build a huge network of relationships in the sect for hundreds or even thousands of years. These people all rely on his protection, and once he loses his power, many people will follow him. And if he wants to leave the sect, who knows how many people will follow him. Unfortunately, the founder of the Heavenly Profound sect, the Heavenly Moon sect, and the Skyrend family, Laozu, was one of the people who fought for the position of true spirit in the 3 Holy Lands, and he was the one who originally had the most hope of obtaining the true spirit inheritance. Therefore, we are very clear about some of the inheritance secrets of the 6 Holy Lands. Naturally, we know that the 6 Holy Lands can only maintain the inheritance of one true spirit Laozu every generation. If this true spirit Laozu suddenly meets with an accident and has to leave this world prematurely, then the 6 Holy Lands will temporarily have a situation where the inheritance of the true spirit is cut off. Accident? Lu Ping said thoughtfully, are you referring to Mara's army besieging the 9 Profound Tower? Full Moon Laozu said with a smile, you can say that. Every Laozu who becomes a true spirit can only stay in the Lesser Thousand World, but this doesn't mean that they can't make a move in this world. Otherwise, how can they intimidate the other sects and maintain the dignity of the Holy Lands? However, they only have this one chance to make a move. Once they attract the attention of this world, it will be too late to hide in the Lesser Thousand World. They can only stay in this world for 1 to 2 years at most before they have to go north to the northern ice plains and leave this world through the spatial passage left behind by the 7th Patriarch. Otherwise, when the heavenly wrath descends, they will only die. At this time, 7 Fan Laozu suddenly interrupted. The Grand Ginseng Laozu of your sect is probably not clear about these things. After becoming a true spirit, he suddenly felt the heavenly wrath descending, so he had no choice but to leave in a hurry. Lu Ping nodded, agreeing with his guess. Full Moon Laozu continued, and the 9 Shen Tower is even worse off. Under the siege of Mara's army, not only did they lose a few pure young adepts, but the remaining 3, including 8 Sister Zhu, was heavily injured. However, in the end they had no choice but to force the true spirit Laozu to help them out. But in the end, the 9 Shen Tower was still breached by Mara's army. It can be said that they have suffered a great loss. Originally, with the foundation of these 6 holy lands, even if the true spirit Laozu is no longer around, with the support of 4 or 5 or even more pure young adepts, they could definitely hold up the facade of the Holy Land until the new true spirit Laozu appears. However, the 9 Shen Tower now only has 2 pure young adepts who can barely maintain their battle power. One of them is probably still in the Lesser Thousand World, receiving the secret technique of becoming a true spirit and unable to come out. In addition, in the process of resisting the calamity of Mara, they have lost even more Dharma adepts. This 9 Shen Tower has actually already suffered a great loss. I'm afraid they have long been afraid, which is why they have no choice but to seal themselves in and be a coward. When Full Moon Laozu said this, Lu Ping understood everything. Haha, this is really an unlucky year for the 9 Shen Tower. So many things have happened at the same time. Xiao Baiyu said coldly, that's right, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'm afraid it's the only chance to pull a holy land down from its pedestal. Of course, this reputation is not what we are after. The reason we are plotting against the 9 Shen Tower is because of the Lesser Thousand World that can allow the true spirit Laozu to avoid the rejection of the heavens and earth, as well as the secret technique that allows the Holy Land to be protected by the true spirit for generations. That's right, even the 7-feathered fan can't compare to these 2 things. Although the heaven-splitting divine weapon is powerful, it can only unleash its destructive power in the hands of the true spirit Laozu. Without the true spirit Laozu, the heaven-splitting divine weapon is merely a slightly more powerful pure yang spiritual treasure. Lu Ping agreed with the 7-feathered fan Laozu's words. He had personally witnessed Xiao Baiyu and the others escape from the might of the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth, and successfully counterattack and injure the pure yang spiritual treasure of Wuxing School Laozu. Full Moon Laozu also said, this is the only chance for our sect to become an existence like the 6 great holy lands. This chance has been waiting for more than 10,000 years since the founding of the sect, Laozu. This time the opportunity has finally come. Xiao Baiyu suddenly asked Lu Ping, Lu Xiaoyu, what do you think? The 7-feathered fan Laozu and Full Moon Laozu both looked at Lu Ping. Lu Ping was silent at first, then the corners of his mouth curled up. Then the curvature became wider and finally he chuckled. Seeing this, the 3 pure yang spiritual treasures also laughed. The 4 of them laughed louder and louder, and their laughter became more and more joyful. Chapter 1434. If you ask me, you'd better stay in the Inyu swamp and train in seclusion. Wait until you've completely consolidated your training. What's so good about watching the sword duel? I'm afraid I'll be in trouble when the time comes. What if I can't take care of you? Lu Ping looked at the person in front of him helplessly. You've said this 3 times. Don't you find it annoying? If I say I'll go, I'll go. You've already promised me before. Why are you going back on your word now? Qi Lianying was unrelenting. She had made up her mind to follow Lu Ping to West River to watch the duel between Xiao Baiyu and the 6 swordsmen of Ziyang Palace. Sai, you've just passed the Thunder Calamity. This is actually the best time for you to consolidate your training. If you miss this opportunity, who knows how many years it'll take to make up for it. So what? This is a pure yang sword duel. Who knows, maybe what I'll gain from watching this duel will be enough to make up for the loss of training in seclusion. Besides, I've already consolidated my training. Although my aura is unstable and I can't hide it, I don't have to worry about my training dropping. I'm not afraid of you, so what are you afraid of? Do you not want to bring me along at all? Lu Ping could only smile bitterly. After returning to the Yingyu swamp from Jiushuan Mountain, Qi Lianying, who could not wait any longer, gave up on her training and urged Lu Ping to bring her to West River to watch the second sword duel between Xiao Baiyu and Ziyang Palace. Lu Ping had received a warning from Yuan Pokong at Jiushuan Mountain. He knew that there might be people who were unhappy with Lu Ping's status in the West River duel and would provoke him. As such, he did not plan to bring Qi Lianying along. After all, those who could provoke Lu Ping would at least be great practitioners at the peak level. Perhaps it might even be the pure Yang Laozu. After all, as a third-generation disciple at the late Dharma stage, he had been invited by both the Sky Fisher Sword Sect and the Ziyang Palace. Such an honor was unique in the world of cultivation. Even Lu Ping himself would not believe it if he said that he did not make others jealous. However, Qi Lianying was determined to go. Seeing her determination, Lu Ping did not force her. After all, Lu Ping had absolute confidence in his current level of training. Even if someone wanted to provoke him, no one would dare to harm Qi Lianying in front of so many people. After all, Lu Ping was not alone in the world of cultivation. After the news of the second sword fight between Ziyang Palace and Xiao Baiyu spread throughout the world, the land of West River had become a lively place in the cultivation world. As the date of the sword fight approached, more and more cultivators came to the land of West River. Lu Ping's appearance in the land of West River quickly caused quite a commotion. As a witness of the sword battle between the two sects, Lu Ping, a third-generation disciple and a late Dharma adept, had received invitations from both the Ziyang Palace and the Sky-Splitting Sword Sect. This was something that the cultivation world was talking about. However, there was also quite a lot of controversy in the world of cultivation. Some felt that with Lu Ping's current level of strength, he was completely qualified to be acknowledged by both sides. Others felt that Lu Ping was, after all, only a third-generation disciple. As a witness of the duel among a group of old monsters with white beards and hair, it was a little too childish. However, regardless of whether they agreed or disagreed, very few people in the world of cultivation doubted whether Lu Ping's current level of strength was qualified to be acknowledged by both sides. However, this did not mean that everyone was convinced. Not long after Lu Ping and Qi Lianying entered the land of Heshi, he saw a cultivator wrapped in a strange robe blocking his way. Lu Ping couldn't help but ask helplessly, "Are you hot?" The cultivator looked at Lu Ping and asked, "Are you hot?" The friar clearly did not expect Lu Ping to ask him this question. Although his head and face were wrapped in this strange robe, Lu Ping could still see that this person was slightly stunned. Qi Lianying, who was standing behind Lu Ping, giggled. In front of him, the friar calmed himself down and said in a low voice, "Please enlighten me, sword deity Water." Although the other party had hidden his identity, Lu Ping could still sense that the other party had not deliberately hidden his level of cultivation. This was because the moment this person blocked Lu Ping's path, Lu Ping's aura, which was like the descent of the Milky Way, surged towards this person in waves. This person could only use all his strength to circulate the aura around his body to resist, but he was suppressed by Lu Ping's aura to the point that he could not speak. He only needed to take a step back and he would be able to temporarily break free from Lu Ping's suppression. However, this person was stubborn and managed to hold on under Lu Ping's suppression. After a while, he exhaled and opened his mouth to ask Lu Ping for advice. However, this also completely exposed his own level of cultivation to Lu Ping. This person was a peak late Dharma adept. However, Lu Ping was more concerned about something else. As his level of cultivation grew, his various remarkable techniques became more and more exquisite. The moment he sensed the other party's level of cultivation, Lu Ping had already sensed some other things. For example, the vitality that the other party was displaying. This was a technique that Lu Ping had learned from his own cultivation of the triple light holy water. This secret technique, which was highly likely to extend to the Wonder Dew, allowed Lu Ping to accurately observe the condition of the other party's body. If the other party had not been severely injured before, which would affect his lifespan, Lu Ping would be able to roughly estimate the other party's age. Of course, originally, Lu Ping had mainly used this secret technique on alchemy or healing. However, now Lu Ping did not mind using it to guess the other party's identity. And judging from the huge vitality that the other party was displaying, this person should have cultivated for about 700 years. It was obvious that he was a second-generation adept. However, judging from the peak Dharma level that the other party was displaying and the powerful strength that Lu Ping had sensed, this person should also be from a famous sect. Furthermore, the sect had high hopes for him to break through to the pure yang stage. He might even be from one of the 6 holy lands. Lu Ping looked at the person in front of him playfully and said, "Senior, why do you have to challenge a junior? You should know the difference between us. You are no match for me." Lu Ping's words caused the person in front of him to be stunned. He could imagine the embarrassment and anger that this person was hiding under his clothes. He said coldly, "What's the use of empty words? If you have the ability, then fight with me." After saying that, the person immediately took out a spirit treasure and pointed it at Lu Ping from afar. The aura around his body continued to rise, like a rising mountain, trying to block the surging river aura in front of him. Lu Ping smiled slightly and said, "So it turns out that your senior wants to test my limits. He purposely sent someone like you who is adept at defense to spar with me. Very well, I will fulfill your wish." When the masked practitioner heard Lu Ping's words, his body trembled slightly. It was obvious that Lu Ping had hit the nail on the head. After that, his expression changed and he immediately retreated slowly as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He wanted to put some distance between him and Lu Ping. This is an experienced opponent. Lu Ping looked at the person in front of him and thought to himself, "No wonder he was sent to test me. It's just that it's still not enough." Lu Ping moved in an instant. Suddenly, several figures appeared in front of the masked cultivator. One of them had a sword of true spirit hovering above his head and pointed at the masked cultivator from afar. The sharp sword intent pierced through the void and directly confronted the spirit treasure in the masked cultivator's hand. The spirit treasure in the masked cultivator's hand suddenly trembled slightly, wanting to respond to the sword of true spirit. The masked cultivator was about to use the spirit treasure to attack when he suddenly stopped. This was because beside the sword of true spirit in Lu Tianping's hand, there was another Lu Tianping with 2 swords flying around him. The 2 swords turned into 2 green dragons and shot toward each other. They also emitted a dense killing intent. The masked cultivator was clearly at a loss when 2 Lu Tianping appeared in front of him at the same time. He could only put away the spirit treasure in front of him and cast a black-yellow light over his head to protect himself. He planned to defend himself and counterattack after seeing Lu Ping's divine ability. Suddenly, however, another Lu Tianping appeared on the other side. After forming a series of hand seals, he pushed them forward and streams of spatial power assailed the masked cultivator. Clearly, the magic skill was about to imprint itself on the masked cultivator's defensive magic skill. Each of the 3 Lu Tianping used a fierce divine ability. The power of each divine ability was so powerful that the masked cultivator couldn't tell which one was real and which one was fake. Which one was the real Lu Tianping and which one was his real trump card? In the blink of an eye, the masked cultivator felt his body drenched in cold sweat, soaking through the clothes he was wrapped in. This Lu Tianping is so powerful. Whatever, retreat first. I'll think about it later. The masked cultivator's figure suddenly became like a berserk bear as he charged backward. However, just as he was retreating with all his strength, a sharp intent suddenly exploded behind him, followed by a crisp pop sound. The masked cultivator cried out in alarm. He had been tricked. The opponent's trump card was actually behind him, but what was even more frightening was that the opponent had easily broken through the protective spell he had activated with his spirit treasure. At this moment, all the hairs on the masked cultivator's body stood up along with the sharp sword intent behind him. Cold sweat was already flowing down his spine. At this time it was too late for him to do anything. He could only open up the last layer of protective gang chi around him at will. As expected, the protective aura was pierced through by the sword intent behind him like a piece of paper. The masked cultivator sighed and could only close his eyes and wait for death. However, the expected pain only lasted for a moment before retreating, leaving behind only a shallow wound. Not much blood flowed out of the wound before it was healed by the true essence around his body. The masked cultivator was about to turn around when he suddenly found that the aura behind him had disappeared. The 3 Lu Ping figures in front of him were still there, but they had also stopped. Although the 3 of them were smiling at the masked cultivator, the 3 Lu Ping's expressions were different. What a marvelous technique! The masked cultivator sighed. He stared at the 3 Lu Ping figures in front of him and said, "May I ask Lu Daoyu, which one is your real body? Which one is the real body and which one can't be the real body?" A voice sounded from behind the 3 Lu Pings. The masked cultivator couldn't see their expressions, but the 3 cultivators smiled at him. Then they moved aside, revealing another Lu Ping standing beside Qi Lianying. But this time, Lu Ping walked over and stood in front of the masked cultivator. The three Lu Pings from before merged with the masked cultivator and disappeared into the masked cultivator's body. The masked cultivator asked again, "You mean to say that each of the three figures is using the real body?" Lu Ping nodded with a smile. The masked cultivator couldn't help but look behind him, but there was nothing there. The masked cultivator said in a low voice, "I heard that you practice Fei Ling Sect's shapeless sword art. Was that the attack from behind me using this body?" In front of him, Lu Ping smiled and said, "You know me very well. That's right, it is indeed the shapeless sword art, the water serene sword." Lu Ping reached out and a blue sword light appeared 3 feet away from the masked cultivator. The one holding the water serene sword was another Lu Ping figure, smiling and nodding at the masked cultivator. He looked exactly the same as the Lu Ping in front of him, but their expressions were completely different. The masked cultivator broke out in a cold sweat again. The masked cultivator sighed and said, "You have endless amazing skills. Even if I know a lot about you, what can I do? My defeat is not an injustice. I am impressed." Impressed. Lu Ping smiled and said, "You flatter me, you flatter me." The West River's Fei Liang Mountain was the highest peak in the cultivation world. Usually, it towered into the clouds and the peak could not be seen. From afar it looked like the mountain had crashed into the sky. The people who climbed the mountain looked at the sea of clouds around them and looked like immortals. This time, the battle between the 6 sword cultivators of the Purple Sun Palace and the Sky Splitter Sword Saint Xiao Baiyu would be held at the peak of the Fei Liang Mountain. At that moment, there were already a few old men who had arrived earlier standing together at the peak of the Fei Liang Mountain. They seemed to be very familiar with each other as they exchanged greetings and teased each other from time to time. "I wonder if the North Sea's Lu Tianping has arrived. I heard that many people have come for him this time. I'm afraid there will be a fierce battle before the sword battle at the Fei Liang Mountain." Chapter 1435. Seeing Lu Ping defeat a late Dharma adept so easily, even Qi Lianying, who had been by Lu Ping's side, was shocked. Even she did not know if Lu Ping was still by her side, because the moment Lu Ping made his move, Qi Lianying's entire attention was drawn to the 3 figures that appeared in front of her. Qi Lianying asked curiously, "What kind of magic did you use just now? Don't tell me you've been staying here without moving?" Lu Ping pretended to be surprised and said, "Don't you know whether I was by your side or not? This is the deceiving the heavens and crossing the seas magic. When trained to a high level, every figure can be used as a killing move." Qi Lianying did not believe him and said, "You're bragging. If every figure could be used to kill an enemy, wouldn't there be 4 or 5 Lu Tianping ganging up on you before the fight even starts? Who would be a match for you then?" Lu Ping laughed and said, "I didn't say that every figure has my own strength. I just said that I can change between these figures at will and choose different ways to deal with different situations." The 2 of them flew towards Fei Liang Mountain. Lu Ping said in a low voice, "I'm afraid it won't be a peaceful journey. I thought that they would challenge me on Fei Liang Mountain in front of all the adepts who came to watch the sword fight, but I didn't expect to be targeted the moment we entered Heshi." Qi Lianying laughed and said, "Isn't this better? There's going to be a lot of fun to watch." Lu Ping was very angry and said, "I'm starting to regret bringing you here, not because the journey is full of danger, but because you're gloating." Qi Lianying, on the other hand, said heartlessly, "I would like to step in and help you, but those who dare to fight with you are all at least late Dharma adepts. You want me, someone who has just passed my first tribulation, to help you deal with this?" Lu Ping was speechless. At this moment, it was impossible for Qi Lianying to leave even if he wanted to. Since someone had already set their eyes on him, Qi Lianying, who had been following him all this while, would naturally be within their line of sight as well. It would be dangerous for Qi Lianying to leave. Sure enough, the 2 of them hadn't even walked 100 miles before they were blocked by another person. This time the person who had come did not hide his identity. His late Dharma stage cultivation was openly displayed. It was obvious that he was here to challenge Lu Ping. However, the aura around this person made Lu Ping's expression look a little strange. It was a big demon king with a strong demonic aura. "How should I address you, fellow Taoist?" Lu Ping asked with a smile as he stood several hundred feet away from the other party. The person before him had the back of a tiger and the waist of a bear. He was very muscular and had a pair of large bell-like eyes that shone with a fierce light. It was obvious that he was someone who was used to killing. However, his face looked a little more simple and honest. It was not as threatening as his eyes. The person said in a low, muffled voice, "I am Hu Lifeng from the Multicolor clan. Everyone says that among the 3 generations below the Pure Yang stage you are the number 1. I am not convinced, so I came all the way from the Western Wilderness to fight with you." Lu Ping said in surprise, "Now it is a duel between the Ziyang Palace and the Sky-Splitting Sword Saint. Besides the fact that the Western Wilderness is a place where the humans gather, if I am not wrong, your race and the Ziyang Palace are enemies. Brother who has come all the way here to challenge me. Aren't you afraid that the people from the Ziyang Palace will find trouble with you?" Hu Liefeng's face revealed a simple and honest smile, but his eyes shone with a bloodthirsty aura. He said, "As long as the pure Yang does not attack, who would dare?" Lu Ping was slightly stunned. If Hu Lifeng dared to say something like this, it was obvious that he had absolute confidence in his own abilities. As expected, Hu Lifeng continued, "I once fought with Fan Mingjie, who is ranked 2nd in the Ziyang Palace in the Western Wilderness. That person only knew how to run around and the fight was not satisfying. I heard from him that you are the number 1 talent among the younger generation in the human cultivation world, so I came all the way from the Western Wilderness to fight you." Lu Ping raised his eyebrows. He was not worried that Fan Mingjie would bring trouble to him. With Lu Ping's current reputation, he was already famous in the cultivation world. If Hu Lifeng really wanted to challenge him, there was no need for him to hear about Lu Ping's reputation from Fan Mingjie. What he cared about was the result of Hu Liefeng's fight with Fan Mingjie. Although Lu Ping had not personally seen Fan Mingjie's strength, Lu Ping knew the depth of Xie Tianyang's strength. Since Fan Mingjie was able to become the 2nd direct disciple of the Ziyang Palace, his strength could not be underestimated. Although the Tiger Demon could not do anything to Fan Mingjie, it was obvious that he had the upper hand in the fight. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat and he said, "Since you have fought with Fan Mingjie before, I wonder if you have also fought with the first direct disciple of the Ziyang Palace, Yan Nanfei?" Hu Lifeng chuckled and said, "We are not much different. The Ziyang Palace is known as the number 1 sword reduction sect of the human race, but their first direct disciple is only SOSO." Lu Ping smiled and asked again, "Your strength is indeed admirable. However, with your strength, what rank do you rank among the cultivators of the same generation in the multicolored tiger clan?" Hu Lifeng suddenly summoned a huge tiger fang saber that was over 10 feet long, and he roared, "Why are you asking so many questions? You human cultivators are always cunning. If you want to know my rank, then fight me first." With that, the huge tiger fang saber had already cut through the void, and it chopped down towards Lu Ping's head. Lu Ping cursed in his heart. This tiger demon looked simple and unruly, but he was actually very shrewd. Lu Ping had just wanted to get some information about the multicolored tiger clan from him, but he did not expect that he would immediately notice and attack Lu Ping. This tiger's fang saber was obviously a spirit treasure as well. Moreover, it should be the tiger demon's natal spirit weapon refined from its own teeth. It was an extremely sharp killing weapon. Lu Ping's expression was solemn. The tiger demon's cultivation might not be as high as the masked cultivators, but the intensity of the battle far surpassed the masked cultivators. If it was a normal battle, this tiger demon might not be as good as the masked cultivator, but if it was a battle of life and death, Lu Ping was more optimistic about this fierce tiger. Hu Lifeng had a life spirit treasure and so did Lu Ping. Fight! 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 The sword of true spirit transformed into 9 dragons, and they also let out shocking dragon roars in midair, entangling the huge saber light in midair. Bang! 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 A series of loud sounds rang out, and 5 of the 9 dragons in midair were severed. However, the remaining 4 entangled the huge saber tightly, preventing it from descending any further. Good. It was rare for someone to choose to fight him head-on. Hu Liefeng's eyes shone with blood-red light, and his face was filled with joy. The moment his tiger fang saber was blocked by Lu Ping, a huge patterned whip suddenly fell from his waist. With a shake of his hand, it turned into a huge whip, and with a crisp sound, the other end of the whip was already at Lu Ping's neck. Lu Ping's neck was about to be wrapped around by the tiger tail whip, but Lu Ping smiled at Hu Lifeng, then suddenly opened his mouth and blew at the tiger tail whip. A tiny bolt of lightning suddenly shot out from his mouth, followed by an earth-shattering explosion. The tiger tail whip was immediately struck by the divine Yin water lightning, turning into a straight, patterned rod. Hu Lifeng roared in pain. Clearly, Lu Ping's divine Yin water lightning had not only injured the tiger tail whip, but also Hu Liefeng's right hand, which was controlling the treasure. At this moment, wisps of green smoke were rising from it, and the fragrance of roasted meat wafted from his hand. However, Hu Laifeng was really brave. He ignored the pain and numbness of his hand after being struck by the divine Yin water lightning, and directly smashed the tiger tail whip, which had turned into a patterned rod, towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping wanted to cut off the tiger's tail with a pair of scissors, but he didn't want to become a sworn enemy of the tiger. So, he suddenly reached out and grabbed the tiger's tail staff. Then he actually began to compete with the tiger's tail staff through the air. This greatly exceeded Hu Liefeng's expectations, but Hu Laifeng was overjoyed. In the cultivation world, apart from the direct descendants of Taoist Hu, it seemed that only the direct descendant of Taoist ape, wise giant ape, could compare with them in terms of innate strength. The tiger tail whip was, after all, a soft object. Even though it had stiffened after being struck by the divine Yin water lightning, and because Hu Laifeng had taken advantage of the situation to attack Lu Ping, the tiger tail whip had turned back into a tiger tail whip the moment Lu Ping grabbed it. Therefore the two of them did not push forward but pulled back. The tiger tail whip immediately became taut in the air. Although Hu Laifeng had absolute confidence in his own strength, his heart was startled when the two of them wrestled. The strength that was transmitted from the tiger tail whip was surprisingly not inferior to his. This person's physical body was so strong. However, at this moment Hu Laifeng suddenly chuckled and loosened his grip on the tiger tail whip. Although Lu Ping's control of his body was strong enough, he could not help but be pushed back by Hu Liefeng's sudden loosening of the tiger tail whip. While Lu Ping was dodged, Hu Laifeng roared and pounced at him. At the same time he stretched out his hands and 3-inch-long sharp claws shot out from his claws. The cold glint made Lu Ping believe that once the tiger monster got close to him, his water curtain heavenly flower would be easily torn apart by the tiger monster. Lu Ping's eyes flashed with a cold light, and he knew that once the tiger monster got close to him, his water curtain heavenly flower would be easily torn apart. However, just when Hu Laifeng was certain that he was about to capture the strongest person below pure yang, his waist suddenly tightened. Hu Laifeng cursed inwardly. Just as he was about to struggle, his chest tightened again, causing him to be unable to breathe. Hu Liefeng's claws tore at his chest, as if he wanted to tear apart the thing that was strangling him. Unexpectedly, his hands tightened again. This time, he could clearly see that what was strangling his hands was a flood dragon that Lu Tianping had transformed into with his flying sword. How was this possible? Hu Laifeng raised his head to look, only to see that his Tiger Fang huge saber was actually tightly entangled by the 4 spirit treasure swords in the air. Hu Laifeng suddenly understood that the 5 flood dragons that were restraining him were actually the 5 that he had cut in half. However, hadn't they already been cut in half? At this moment, another flood dragon coiled around Hu Liefeng's legs and neck. He was completely immobilized, and in reality Hu Laifeng did not dare to move, because the flood dragon around his chest had already sealed his heart space. Let alone resisting, he could not even squeeze a drop of spiritual energy out of his heart space. At this moment, if Lu Ping wanted to take his life, it was all up to him. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.